Hey, everybody. Happy Wine Wednesday. I hope your week has been fabulous. First thing I want to say is everybody on social media that wished me a happy birthday. My birthday was on the 9th. And I turned 21 again. And anybody who wished me happy birthday, thank you so much. I've been so busy. My family made it a birthday week and have been spoiling me rotten.
Yay.
So I haven't been on media very much, but I will get to those posts and like everything and respond. Just I wasn't ignoring anybody. I just really have not been on media at all. The roses behind me. My daughter, my 15-year-old daughter, is such a sweetheart. She got me roses. I still have my Seahorse class, of course, from Holly. Yes, it isn't a beer mug. It's kind of an inside joke. But anyways, it's one of those glasses that's not real beer. It's a vase. Anyways.
I was
That's
going to ask
cool.
you if that was beer in there.
It's probably good for them.
But anybody who comes later is going to be like, why she got roses and beer cup? Watch the beginning. And my significant other knows me oh so well. I got things like a George Foreman because I'm, getting a little aged and want to lose some weight. And I got a foot bath massager thingy. I don't know what it's called, but it's like this. It's great. It's so great. Anyhow, had a good birthday. Had a great time with family. I will get back to all of you and say thank you for your posts very soon. Thank you very much. I do appreciate all your well wishes. I'm sipping on some Pinot Noir tonight, and I've got Holly and Cheryl with me. Ray couldn't come again this week. He's not ditching us, guys. He just got stuff going on, but he'll be back next week. And still looking to schedule the Ask Seahorse Source Part 3. That's going to be about breeding and probiotics. Dan's just been really busy too. So everybody's been kind of hectic and chaotic, but thank you for coming and joining us on Wednesday. And it's open chat. So again, thank you. Last week we saw the 360-gallon Seahorse tank that was amazing. Hopefully all you guys continue to come back and join us. If you have the link, feel free to jump in anytime you want. Otherwise, we're going to chit chat and take your questions in the comments. Okay, I'm done with my spiel. Holly, how you doing? We see your beautiful tank behind you.
I am doing great. Yes. So this is my grow out tank behind me, actually. So this is the one that's the sterile environment, no sand. Everything in there is artificial. So it's just the artificial decor and the seahorses in there. There's no cleanup crew. There's no macro, nothing, no rocks, none of that. It's just them and their stuff, which this tank is the easiest to take care of. I have two tanks. My display tank is kind of almost a combo reef tank, but it's harder.
Yep.
So I would say if somebody's really interested in seahorses and not much else and they're just starting out, probably the easiest way for maintenance and taking care of them is to go all artificial, bare bottom, a lot of filtration. You need that and keep it really clean, and it's not that bad to take care of. Seriously.
All
This
my
tank
tanks are
is
bare.
not
All
bad.
my tanks are bare bottom, every one of them. And I
Yeah.
do, depending on the tank, I do have some macro in some of them, but
Mm-hmm.
that's other than the seahorses. That's the only living thing in there because it's so much easier. I don't like having food sitting in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So they have a finite amount of time, and then the bottom gets cleaned. And it takes me a matter of a couple minutes to remove any uneaten food. And it's just so much easier to maintain and maintain your water quality compared to trying to run a tank with rock and sand and everything else because the
Well,
salt.
but wait a minute. Danny showed us last week that if you do a bigger tank, you can get away with that stuff a lot easier.
Very
Because his
true. Yeah.
gorgeous tank, go check out last week's episode, man. That tank was beautiful. But Holly, no, you're right. I mean, to be honest, my first tank, because I, didn't have the friends that I have now and didn't have the experience,
Hmm.
my first tank, I set up pretty much. I mean, I don't think I didn't have sand in it, but I did have rock. It was the macro tank that was in the
Yeah.
magazine. So there was macros everywhere. And I mean, I was successful for a good 2 years. So I
Hmm.
mean, we're not saying you can't have a tank that's beautiful and looks like a reef, but Holly's advice is great.
You absolutely
If
can. It's just easier. Like I have
easier.
another tank, but the other tank is more work. But
Right.
there's more interesting stuff going on. It's kind of
Right.
like Dan's take last week when there's other fish to interact with and the cleanup crew, and there's other stuff to look at in there. Yes, it is, more interesting, but
Exactly.
there's more work that goes along with it, I found. And because of the lifestyle that I live and being an insurance professional, it's
Yeah.
more time consuming than I feel like I want to put into it. So you kind of have to
Decide what
go
you want out of the
for
tank.
you. And yeah, and I mean, if you're someone that has the time and the money to spend on that type of
Right.
thing, it totally can work.
Yep.
Like you said, there's a right tank for everybody, but you kind of have to, ask questions and see, well, how much time do you spend on your tank? What do you do to maintain it? What kind of equipment do you use and need? And there's easier ways, and there's harder ways that might be more satisfactory in the
Right.
end
Well,
for
yeah,
if
it
you
depends.
have the time and money to commit. It's
Right.
I
Well, like I
always
was saying, it depends on what you're going for. Like in the
yes.
40-gallon all-in-one, my entire goal was number one, just to show that you can keep a smaller tank for long term
Mhm.
with Seahorses healthy.
Mhm.
So filtration, 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 but within a 40-gallon all-in-one, so no sump. And then second of all, so it's minimal.
Mhm.
I do have
Mhm.
rock, but no sand, all that, because it does make it easier to take care of. And because in an all-in-one, you can only go so far with filtration without adding on a sump or adding on a can
Mhm.
or whatever. So I stayed minimal with that. But after seeing last week Danny's tank, I am seriously considering starting another tank that looks like a reef. I've got
Bigger
the fifth.
tanks are more forgiving too.
Yeah.
You have to the more water volume you have, it actually makes it easier. So I mean, I
Yes.
see all the time people are wanting because they think a smaller tank might be easier, the 30-gallon for a pair or whatever. But in my experience over the years, I started with a 30-gallon myself. And I
Yeah.
can tell you straight up, the bigger tanks are easier actually
Agree.
to
Agree
maintain.
100%. And before we
Yeah.
go further though, Holly, since we were talking about your tank behind you, oh, actually, I know I'm jumping around, guys, sorry, but I was going to say also, I just like to throw this out here every time. It also depends on your goals. If you're looking
Mhm,
to buy seahorses because you want to watch a pair of seahorses dance around a beautiful tank, for sure go
mhm,
with a reef looking tank and jazz it out and make it beautiful and all that, because that's what you want out of the
mhm,
tank. When Holly and I and Cheryl talk, we're like, I personally really want my seahorses to breed again because I miss the little fry and trying to raise the fry. So my tank's minimal for that reason also, because not only am I trying to minimize maintenance, but I want, you know there are just reasons why if you're trying to breed and have fry, you don't want everything else in the tank. So it just totally depends on your goals. But what I was going to say, Holly, is your beautiful tank behind you. You've shown us that even without rock and without sand and without coral, you can have a beautiful seahorse tank because that's colorful. It's pretty. The
mhm,
seahorses love it, and it's
mhm.
easier, as you said. But can you go through really quick and just remind us all of the equipment you have attached? Because people see a tank with no rock, and you're like, "How is this
Yeah,
being
they see
filtered?"
the tank and not so along the side of the tank is actually a sump, I believe. And one thing you have to remember about sumps, which I discovered, is they're sold as so many gallons. So the sump that I have, I believe it was sold as a probably 30-gallon sump. But when you put the water in it and fill it, it is never the volume of the
Right,
actual shape of it.
right,
So I believe what is actually in here is closer to 20, 15, 20 gallons in that sump.
okay,
So I didn't put together the sump myself from an actual tank. It's an actual commercially made sump. So it has sections
nice,
in it. And the first section, I have a skimmer that's rated for 240 gallons. And this is a 75-gallon tank. In the middle section, I have a bunch of bio balls and also the sponge filters that I've thrown in there, to use for biological filtration. So it's full of those things. I have air lines running to the bio balls just to keep them aerated, try to, as Cheryl suggested that to me a while back. Then there's like a sponge between sections, and it's in that section you can put media or whatever. It's narrow, it's only, yay wide. So not much you can put in there, but it's designed to put stuff in there. I don't have anything in it other than sponge, but the water flows kind of through the sponge into the area where I have my pump. And where the pump is, I have in there my aquachar in a bag. And then from there, it goes, the water comes up through. My husband plumbed it for me. It's kind of homemade situation. So we have the flexible, clear tubing. It goes through a heater at that point and into the tank through the return nozzles there. I also have it hooked to a chiller. Now, the chiller is on its own pump that pumps water from the sump through the chiller continuously. I leave the chiller hooked up year round just so I don't have to clean it every season or mess with it. It's always just ready to go. So when it judges the temperature is too high, the chiller kicks on. When the temperature is too low, the heater kicks on. So I have those running year round because I live in kind of a mountain climate where we get hot in the summer and very cold in the winter. And last few weeks, we have jumped all over the place. Yeah. We had a week where we hit the 80s, and then all of a sudden we're in the 30s, and now we're going 80s again this weekend, all within a few days. So I leave all my equipment hooked up year round and just ready to go. And I have used Cheryl's methods in the past. Before I got the chillers, I did use fans and ice packs to keep the tanks cool. But I have to say, it was a fight and labor intensive for me. So when
the chiller's worth it, huh?
When I had the money, I made the investment on the chillers. They are expensive. Mine were $500 a piece, and my tanks, and that's a low price. My tanks are, this one, like I said, is a 75-gallon. My display tank is a 55-gallon. I got the same chiller for each of the tanks. And yeah, they're expensive, but in my situation, having the worry all the time is the tank's gonna stay cool enough, have the fans, the ice, the everything that it took, water changes to keep it cool.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Worth it if you can afford it. So I would say if you live in a climate where you need to cool down the tanks, I would budget for that if you can.
Absolutely. And like I live in Indiana, right? So our temperature is crazy wild too, but it's not drastic crazy wild. Like it'll be hot one day, cold the next, but not the temperatures you're talking about. And I wanted to say hi, Kevin. Hi, Andrea. I see your question, Andrea. As soon as I get done chatting with Holly, we will put it up on the screen and answer it. And Kevin, I got my char chambers. I'm going to tell you about them in a little bit too. But sorry, Holly, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to say hi to them. But
one of the things you need to remember.
Questions for someone else who's here watching, but she's working, so can't comment. So when we have time to talk about that,
and if Chris is in the is watching, the questions Holly has, I believe, are about Whitey Eye. So jump in if you're able. I'll text him in a second. But Cheryl, were you going to say something? Go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing to remember with a tank is I run turbine fans because I can't afford chillers for every system I have. I mean, when you're running a 13 plus tanks,
you have a lot.
Yeah. And so I use actually cooling fans. I do get more evaporation, so I really have to watch my specific gravity during
Yes.
the warmer months and
Mhm.
stay on top of that. But that's not that difficult. The other thing is, too, I don't like running cold packs unless I have an emergency. So I rely on my fans in the summer months. And then I actually have portable heaters that I use in the winter months to help stabilize the tanks throughout the year. And it actually
Gotcha.
works very well. But all my tanks are bare bottom. All my systems are on sumps. My smallest sumps are 30-gallon tanks that I rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
And I run close to 30 gallons in each sump. So my smallest system actually is a total of about 70 gallons, and those are my nursery systems.
Right, but don't forget, if you're new or watching this and you want seahorses and you're trying to learn about them, I'm telling you, I personally have kept tanks both ways. Holly's right, Cheryl's right. We're giving you the best advice. If you want to have a successful long-term seahorse tank, if you're interested in breeding, definitely, bare bottom, larger's better, sump is good, huge skimmer, all this stuff is correct. But you can, and I've proven it multiple times in multiple tanks, set up just a beautiful little seahorse tank. It might not last forever. You might have to end up doing more maintenance or adding a sump later, but it's very possible. We're not trying to put people off here. We're
Mhm.
just telling you the easiest way to do it. And I'll tell you something about temperature as soon as we go to Andrea's question. I am lucky. As I said, I'm in Indiana. So, one day it's raining, one day it's hot, one day it's snowing, and it's crazy, but the temperature doesn't, it's not drastic the way that Holly's situation is. So I've never used heaters or chillers on a single seahorse tank. None of them. Not a heater or a chiller. However, I will tell you this: I depend on my central air
Yes.
because, but what I do want to say is I'm not
Mhm.
giving that actual advice because I had a situation, 5 years ago, where in my it wasn't a rectus tank, it was my juvenile tank that was in the bedroom. Uh, we I the power outage, middle of the day. I was at work. By the time I got home, the tank was 90 degrees,
Yeah.
and I ended up with very, very sick seahorses. They didn't get sick right away. I
Mhm.
lowered the temp. I lowered the temp too fast because I didn't know what I was doing. If you ever have that situation, lower it slowly. No drastic changes. You don't want drastic. But anyways, the power went out. The central air quit working, and within a month, every single seahorse in that tank, I had to treat them for
Yeah.
Mhm.
Vibrio.
Yeah, yeah.
My,
So,
my
And
biggest problem
and
with
to say to that effect too, if you keep your house, that's another thing is it does make a big difference the temperature that you keep your house.
yep.
Because we do not run our HVAC here because of the cost. I
Yeah.
did one during one summer. I've had the seahorses now a few years. And to kind of experiment before I got the chillers, I did run the AC to keep the house the right temperature for them, just to compare what the electric bill would be between using that or using the chillers.
Mm.
What I did find, the chillers saved me a great deal of money on the electric bill. So they were worth it in that respect
Yep.
as well. And I
my
only have two tanks, like I said, so two chillers. So it's not the same as Cheryl having a bunch of
15
tanks
tanks. Right.
and all that. So it kind of depends on your situation, but you need to keep them in that right temperature range whatever it takes.
Yeah.
So I recommend you be prepared, like for power outages or
Yep.
whatever. We have a generator specifically for that reason for the seahorses. And I've done in other cases, like I said, before I had the chillers, whatever it took, I used actually water changes,
Mm-hmm.
partial daily water changes. The ice, like someone I saw as a mentioning, the ice doesn't work that well. It melts pretty quickly. You have to use a lot of ice packs to lower tank
yeah.
Well,
temperature.
yeah, and wait. If you're using ice,
And
isn't wait, Holly.
yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off. And Andrea, I'm going to put your question back up, and we're going to actually read it and talk about it.
Mhm.
But no, I have two questions for you, Holly. Number one, if you're using ice packs or ice or whatever, isn't that messing with the specific gravity salinity also? And
No,
as Kevin said,
I tell you
that's
why
why
not.
we all need monitor systems. So do you use a monitor system? Go ahead and answer both.
No, so what I do is every ice pack. So what I buy is like the ice packs that you put in lunch boxes.
Sure.
They come in pouches or whatever. Okay, so I own a ton of those.
Gotcha.
And I seal them in Ziploc bags and
Gotcha.
store them in the freezer. And then also ice cubes. I have an ice maker in my refrigerator. So I would make big Ziploc bags, fill it with the ice from the ice maker, store it in the freezer, and rotate them out as they melt. But if you have them sealed in Ziploc bags, whatever you're using, you're not melting water into the tank.
Exactly.
You have to make
Gotcha.
sure your
Yeah.
Ziploc has no
Yeah.
leaks. And the bags, from what I understand, actually they are non-toxic. The
Gotcha.
ones,
Yeah.
so if they did leak a little, it's not going to be hurting anybody. I
Drastic.
don't
Right.
believe. I've never had that happen. So, but the problem is they don't last long. It's a pain in the butt. You're maintaining it. It's time consuming because you're checking and replacing them. Um, Fans, I've used fans, and yeah, they work to an extent, but it's like I said earlier, it depends on the temperature of your house.
Yep.
It's kind of like the heaters that are preset. They come preset to 78 degrees, right? And
Right.
but it's for a normally temperatured room that's around 70 degrees.
Right.
And I use those heaters like for my amphipods and stuff, but my amphipods are off in a part of my house that is not average house temperature. So if your house is not average temperature, the preset heater to 78 degrees is not going to heat it to 78 degrees. It's going to heat it to 70 or
Mm.
72 or 74 because it's made for a certain differential between the temperatures.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You
Wow,
know,
that's good to
so
know.
it's not capable of heating the water to 78 if it's sitting in a room that's 50 degrees. You
Well,
got
I'm,
So wait,
I'm
wait, hang on. Andrea just get out the question real quick. She was asking this question, so I'm so glad we started talking about it. But
Mhm.
should she drop the money on a chiller? Her tank is a 73.5 to 74.5. Ice packs aren't working. And then she also asked, what type of chiller did you choose, Holly?
I'm going to step
Okay.
in here real quick
Go
for a
ahead.
moment
Go
because
ahead.
I know several people that I've known for years that have kept seahorses for years that
Mm-hmm.
have had chillers fail on them
Mm.
just in the last year, and they have ended up losing everything.
Oh
Chillers are
no.
just one more mechanical problem
Mhm.
that is
Well,
very
wait.
hard to
Let's take
correct.
it back. Yeah, I agree with you, Cheryl. So let's take it back to Kevin's comment. I am going to talk to our chambers. I promise. Thank you, Kevin. I got it. Got them. But so controllers, is that the answer? I mean, whether you're talking about you
A
need a chiller or
controller,
not,
all a
heater or not,
controller, yeah, a controller is going to basically do, if you have an equipment
monitor.
failure, is
Yeah.
tell you that you've got a major problem. It's
But
not
isn't
going to
that
correct.
important?
It's not going to correct the problem. This is why I'm so very hands-on with my tanks
Yeah.
because I monitor the temp constantly. Uh, I mean, I had lost my HVAC a couple months ago, and my tanks never. I was using a combination of ice packs and turbo fans, and I was
Right.
able to keep them cool. As opposed to at that point, I may very well have blown a chiller if I was running chillers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not. I'm not. I try to reduce the amount of mechanical stuff I have in a system because the more mechanical stuff you add, the more potential you've got for something to go wrong.
See,
Something's
but
going.
you know what? You know what?
Mhm.
I think almost the exact opposite because if I had had a monitor on the system when the power outage happened, it could have alerted me on my phone. These things are complex now where they alert you
Yeah,
on your
yeah.
phone when something's wrong. I was at work. I could have come home. Maybe it would have only, not even jumped any
Mhm.
temperature because I would have come and fixed it. Like you're home, Cheryl, most of the time. So you're able to do that. People that aren't home all the time, I don't know. Kevin, I'm dying for someone to come on and talk controllers and monitors, because one of the biggest problems I have with them, like there's ink birds and easy ones like that, but they're not the sophisticated ones like Apex or Neptune that'll let you know on your phone that something's wrong and you can look at your tank constantly. I really love those, but I need to figure out how they can be used on several different tanks, because it just doesn't, it's hard for me to say that expenditure is worth it for one tank when it's not some sophisticated reef. It's Seahorse, you know what I mean? So would love for you to come in sometime and talk.
Can go wrong. I mean, the heaters, all of it.
Look at
I
the
mean,
Seahorse. The Seahorse is behind your head. Sorry, go ahead. Swimming behind you.
What are they doing?
Sorry, Ellie. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know, but everything, the thing is, everything has the potential to go wrong. And it was like Danny's point last week when he was showing his tank. He's like, yeah, everything looks great now, but in 2 weeks, this could all be gone. You know, there's always that potential, which is why we have to watch and monitor and do the best we can. Now, I'm in a position to where with my career, I'm self-employed and I'm in insurance, and I'm either home most of the time or my husband is home all the time. You know, and so there's pretty much almost always someone here. So if something really goes wrong, it's going to get noticed. I don't have any fancy things that notify me if something's wrong. I walk around and look at them and check on things throughout the day, and I've got multiple stuff showing me readings on the tank where I can glance at it. One of my favorite tools is actually a temperature reading gun that I got at a hardware
store
to check water temperatures, and I just aim it at whatever I want to check, and it'll give me a reading to see if I'm matching water temperatures, you know, between the gauges on the tank. Or
so your neighbors think you're shooting up the tanks, but you're really just taking the temperature.
Well, where I live, I don't know if you've noticed.
You don't have neighbors, okay? Right.
Facing out the window, but I'm out in the woods, so I don't actually have too many neighbors. I don't think they know much other than because they know me, I have seahorses. But
one of the things to remember when you've got tanks is if you set your HVAC at 73, and then you're running multiple pumps in there for power heads, circulation, etc., you're going to increase your water temperature in a 24-hour period by at least 3 degrees. So running them at 73 is not going to keep them cool enough because they're going to heat up. This is why I shoot for 69, and I believe Heather does the same thing. Shoots for 69, 70 at a max for the tank temp, because the power heads, the pumps, everything else are going to warm up. I also go with very low energy flow pumps that are basically they're adjustable, so I can even adjust flow as needed.
If you have a light on the tank, that affects them too. Yeah.
That's the pump I use.
Yeah.
And this was recommended by Dan. I have these in both my 75 and my 55 gallon. Same
I use
size,
them too.
exactly the same. It is adjustable. And I've had them for a few years now. I've been very happy with them. The cost was right. They're not that expensive, and I haven't had any problems with them. They've got a controller, like if you could see, on the top of the box. So I can adjust the flow of the pump based on, I had to do it on the grow out tank, because when we switched out the grow out tank, anybody who's been following probably remembers my original grow out tank was an 85 gallon acrylic that burst a seam and flooded my house.
Mm-mm-mm.
And so I had to rush out. I bought this 75-gallon glass tank. It was on sale through Petco, had their tank sale
Yeah.
thing going on. So I ran out that day and bought that tank and switched over. But I had to add, because the other one had a built in overflow and this one did not, and I did not have access to drilled tanks or anything, so I had to order overflow boxes. So this has two, and what I found was the rate of the overflow boxes was more than
Right.
my old tank was, so I had to turn this pump up a bit to
Yep.
match it. So it's good to have an adjustable pump is
Yep.
another piece of advice
Absolutely.
I have. And somebody
Absolutely.
was asking, I saw about what brand
Yes.
my chillers
Chiller.
are. They're a cheap brand. They're actually from China. They're called Baoshishan. I got them on Amazon. I've been happy with the performance. Programming them was hard.
I
the
remember you going through that.
directions were, because the company is foreign, they're from China. Um, I had to actually, they had to work with me on programming the chillers because the directions were wrong and hard to understand. But I contacted them through Amazon email, I believe, or email somehow. I got with them and they were very responsive. They really helped me out, but their time is opposite of ours in the US. So our night is their day. So I would send them a email message and that I'd have a message from them by the next day.
So,
So
Miss Holly, I'm sharing screen and showing
Mhm.
what I think the
That's it.
Boshishan, but
Yeah.
this says for 42 gallons. So, can you just choose? I didn't put
That's
it.
not mine. Yeah, it's the same
Okay.
company, but yeah, they're designed for different size tanks. So
Okay.
you have to
Gotcha.
find the one that's right for yours. And mine was a
Ah,
$500 chiller.
sorry. Go ahead and
And
speak. I'm just trying to get it.
yeah, so you just have to match up your size of tank, and bigger is always better when it comes
There
to
you go.
equipment. So you want it more powerful generally than what they say. So I think mine's probably the second one. It looks just like that.
Oh, shoot.
The
Sorry. I
500
stopped.
liter. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there you go.
One
You
of the
can.
things too to keep in mind when you're equipping an aquarium
Mm-hmm.
is look for pumps that have a very low energy consumption that tend to run cool.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my oldest pumps that I've had for over 15 years were the old Marineland, not the Maxi Jet, but the internal pumps. They're adjustable and they still work very well. And I added some CC pumps to them, to the system as backups because they also have a very low energy requirement and run very cool compared to many other pumps. Some pumps, you start running them and you can put your hand on them and they're just hot as heck. And that's
Right.
going to your water.
Sometimes cheap's not
I'll
better.
I'll say about the Jabeo, I don't think it heats the water at all.
No, the Jabeos
Because
were
I
excellent.
I
Yeah.
have more trouble keeping my temperatures up in winter. Like I
Me
did
too.
my well, we went back into false winter here. We had a blast of summer and then we went back into winter this past week.
Yep.
And so I was noticing when I do my water change weekly, we had been getting snow and stuff that day. So it was colder again than usual. So I try to match the water of the tank when I'm doing my water changes, of course, within a couple degrees. So I took my little gun and did a water temperature read on the tank and it was 65 degrees. And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
okay, well, yeah, we can
That's a
warm
little
that
low.
up a little bit. Yeah, it gets a little low when our temperatures go really low and we don't have a fire going in the fireplace in the other room. This room is like it's like a built on to the house and it's far away from heating and cooling sources. So it tends to be closer to the elements than the rest of the house. So this tank will get cooler temperatures. These guys, like I said, they'll sometimes get down to 65 is about the lowest. I've
Yeah.
seen it here, but they have a heater, a flow through heater, that's set to
Mhm.
70, but it's fine. And the
Yeah.
thing I found about heaters, when you have big tanks, it's hard to find heaters strong enough, big enough to match the volume of your tank unless
Mm.
you're using multiple heaters somehow. And, with our seahorses, we don't want them hitching on the heaters. So
Right.
I don't use heaters in the tank. I use flow through heaters where the water goes through the heater and into the tank.
Yeah.
I
I,
could
I
not
use,
So
fit
wait.
a big enough heater in my sump. My sump
yeah.
is too small to fit a huge heater enough to heat that tank.
Well, the thing
Okay.
is,
Wait.
what
Wait. Wait. Wait.
what I do is I go ahead and add two heaters in the
Yeah.
sump,
Or yeah.
and that works really well. I don't have to worry about the seahorses, and it really does help stabilize the temperature.
Yeah.
And it depends on the system, how big the system is, whether I'm running one or two, but I can keep them very stable with the heater. And I live on a crawl space, so when we get down below freezing, the floor underneath the tanks is
Ooh.
sitting at close to freezing. But I
Wow.
Mhm.
do have a lot of pond liner and stuff like that on the flooring to help insulate them, so I don't see drastic changes. But I would rather they were staying on the cool side
Yeah.
Versus
than
hot.
on the hot
Yeah.
side.
Absolutely. But like in Holly's case, she couldn't fit the heater. But I'm curious too, and I promise we're
Mhm.
gonna. Kevin, I saw where you said we need to get Carlos from Coral View. Uh, Hook me up, put me in touch. We'll get him on here for sure. And I'm gonna talk char chambers. I promise. I'm so excited. But Holly, you said so in your flow through. See, because some people like when I first got into this, and if I listened to the stuff we talk about on this channel, I'd be like, oh hell no, because flow through this, that, the other. Man, my first tank was very simple, guys. I ended up adding a sump. I mean, my seahorses lived, they gave me babies, everything was great, but I
Amen.
started off small,
Mhm.
sand, rock, no, not sand,
Yep.
rock, macros. So you can do it that way. It's just as you get going, you'll realize that it's easier to do it the way that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But don't ever feel like, oh my gosh, I got to do all this stuff just to
Yeah.
have seahorses. You
Yeah.
don't. But Holly, so in your system, you said it goes through heating and then chilling. I'm trying to
Into the
understand.
tank. Okay. All right.
Or they
So
come off and on based on the temp, right?
All
Is that
right,
what you
so
mean?
they're not all together. So the way the Baoshishan chiller works, and they're
Mm-hmm.
probably all different, but that particular chiller, it has its own pump, and it's like a little pump that sits in the water. So I put it in the sump, and what it does is it pumps water through the chiller and then back into the sump.
Okay.
Okay. So it's separate from the whole rest of the system.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. I got
So
it
the
now.
way the heater works is you set it up in line to your return nozzles. So the water that's being pumped into the tank gets pumped through the heater. It fits between two pieces
Gotcha.
of piping. And it judges the temperature of the water flowing through it like kind of, I don't know if I can aim it that way for you. You can, it's
I
hard to
see
see.
it.
Okay, so you can see the red light, and mine's
Yep.
it's it's only measured in Celsius in this particular model, so I've kind of learned Celsius from my heater.
There you go.
So 20.5 is about right for the seahorses as far as Celsius. I believe that's somewhere in the like high 60s, like 68, 69, right around there. So that tells me that water is that temperature, okay, coming in
Yep.
over here. But if I take my gun to judge the temperature, or if I stick a temperature probe over here, because
Mm-hmm.
the tank is so big and it's far away from that heater, it might be a little bit colder.
Gotcha.
Here, see what I'm saying?
Yep.
But see,
But
that's good for seahorses because they can decide whether they want to move to a
yeah,
cooler
they
spot
Yeah.
decide where
Hey.
they want
or
to
a
hang
warmer
out.
spot.
And
That I don't
honestly,
sweat.
they don't mind when it gets a little colder, when it's like 65 or whatever. They don't seem to care. The only thing is, I've noticed is when it's colder in their tank, they're slower.
Yep.
That they might not want to eat as much, or they're just it slows down their systems, and it's not. I don't think it's bad, really. Honestly, I think, like Cheryl says, I'd rather see it too cool than too
Right.
warm for them, because I know
Yeah.
no bacteria is getting to them at that temperature. So I feel like they're doing all right, and they don't mind. They get used to it, and
Yep.
I'm more worried about the higher temperatures in the summer. And so, I mean, you got to think about too. That's why, like in my area, we have power outages frequently.
All the
So
time.
I
Yeah.
have power backup, because if you can't keep their filtration and stuff going over when you have issues like that, you risk losing the seahorses to not having, their filtration and oxygen and heating and cooling and all the things that they need. So I
Yeah.
do recommend, if you live at all, and pretty much this is happening all over the country now, I think, if you live in an area where you may face power outages and things, I would at least have a small generator. We started with a small generator, and it's enough to run all your aquariums. The aquariums, honestly, they don't use that much power, I
I,
think, as
I,
compared to
have,
other
I
things
have a
on the.
battery powered generator that I keep charged. And I lost power here one day, and it was in the middle of summer for
Mhm.
over 3 hours. Had all my tanks hooked up to it, and after 3 hours, it was less than a third of it discharged. So
Yeah,
they
it's
don't really
not.
draw much power. I agree. I also have a large gas powered generator as a backup on that, but I
Mhm.
keep the portable one in the house charged all the time, just in case. And,
Smart.
and
Mhm.
it's one of those things where uh, I don't have to use it all the time, but when I need it, I'm thankful
It's
that I have.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because really,
Well,
you just never know, and the smaller generators, they don't cost a lot,
right.
and it can totally save your tanks. I have multiple tanks. We have one, two, three, four tanks, and they can all run fine on one small generator. All the heaters, chillers, everything.
Nice.
What I will say is the chillers draw more power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a whole house generator now, and I have noticed on the small generator, when the chillers come on, because you can hear the motor run on the generator when there's more power being
Right.
used. If a
Yep.
chiller kicks on, it's doing a big draw on the small generators.
One thing Kevin said, FYI, always live close to or on same grid as emergency services like
Yeah,
fire.
if you can choose.
Well, I live my grid. I'm on 3 military bases,
Hmm.
so I can
Lucky
guarantee
you.
you, because when I get a power outage, it's back
You're
on.
the first to, yeah, you're the first to get power
Yeah,
back. Hey,
yeah.
hey, and I have a really silly question, but I never have ever, I've heard people pronounce this so many different ways. How do you pronounce the name of the company that Kevin put in the comment? Is
Now
it
what?
Sice?
ADV.
No,
CITES? Yeah,
You're
it's
looking at.
Sice. Okay. I
CITES.
always worry that I'm getting it wrong. Okay. But no, he just said ADV pumps come with temperature sensors built in and reports through an app.
Mhm.
That's awesome. But I still want to get somebody good with the monitors to come in because, you know, monitoring temperature is crucially important for seahorse keepers. But
Mhm.
if for the same cost or, somewhere around the same price, you can monitor everything, why not? You know what I mean?
Sea
Like,
Shay. He says.
Shay. Okay, thank you. See, I knew I was getting it wrong. Shay. I've actually met these people too, and it's at Macna's, and I can't. I'm like,
I would not admit
I'm
that.
terrible. I'm absolutely terrible with names, whether it's your name or earlier I couldn't remember Danny's name. I'm just so terrible with names. Anyways, okay, I got off on a rambling. But no, did we answer all the temp questions, you guys, or was there anything else that we missed?
One things I would advise everybody to do is there's no substitute for hands-on double checking your systems on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is probably one of the biggest things where many people, I need to top this off. Well, I'm just going to top this off. Well, they didn't check it, and specific gravity was already low, or the specific gravity was already way too high, or the temperature was off. And there's nothing, you cannot substitute hands-on checking on a daily basis on a tank. And it doesn't take long.
I'm still here. I'm just having a coughing fit, so I'm not making you guys watch it. But
You're having a coffee fit?
Coughing. I was coughing crazy. Coughing. Okay. Holly, anything else to report while I finish my coughing fit, and then we can.
Yeah, because I did want to bring up on our friend's behalf, Shyla, she might be watching, but she's working, so unable to comment. And she has some new Whitey Eye Seahorses. And at first they were reluctant eating. She was pretty positive that they are captive bred because she lives in Singapore and that's the way they get them. They're only captive bred, she says. They came from Australia. And so at first they weren't quite eating right. They were inspecting the dishes a lot. They were interested, but they weren't really eating. And I've been talking to her, and because I'm used to using dishes and things, the seahorses are eating now. We worked that out. And all it was she has some see-through clear feeding stations. She put them on the ground in the sand, and I've run it because I use those too. And my seahorses are rectus, hers are Whitey Eye, but it just took them a minute to figure out the feeding station. And I think part of what it was that I wanted to bring up is that my seahorses, when I started using clear feeding stations, because I used soap dishes that were clear, it's kind of confusing for them because they see through it. Another thing is if you have sand. Yeah, another thing is if they have trouble seeing it, I think, is what it is, or judging where it is. Yes. Another thing is when you have sand. Now, my seahorses will not eat out of the sand. If something is on the sand, they will not snick it. And she had her clear seahorse dish on top of the sand. So I told her, I said, they're probably having a hard time judging.
They think it's on the sand.
They can't see it right, or they think it's sand. They're figuring it out. I said, but my seahorses, it took them longer to figure out the clear dishes than the opaque ones. And so sure enough, a few days later, now she says they're eating, they're doing well, they're exploring the tank, so gotten over that. But they're Whitey Eye, which I'm not that familiar with. And she's saying she's feeding them a third of a cube of Hikari mysis for 2 seahorses, and they're not eating it all. So she's wondering how much to feed.
I'd cut back.
Okay.
Smaller. So I know Dan said 1 cube of Hikari mysis is good for about 3 erectus. But she has Whitey Eye, so I would expect them to eat less. So is a third of a cube about right for the 2 of them?
Okay, wait. I know Cheryl wants to talk too. Number 1, Chris Carey would be perfect to answer these questions.
Yes,
and unfortunately, right after his move, and we hope you're doing so well, Chris, because he messaged and said he's apparently got COVID, so he couldn't come.
Oh, no.
But if you're in the comments, Chris, please comment and let us know your thoughts, and we will follow up with him. But I'll tell you, my seahorses don't eat a full cube every feeding. No way.
The thing is,
So
they're going to be hungriest in the morning.
Mhm.
By the midday feeding, if you've done everything right, they're not going to be quite as interested because they've been eating through the morning. By the
Mhm.
evening feeding, they're getting tired because they've been hunting all day and swimming all day.
Mhm.
And the other thing that you have to keep in mind, their eyes don't work like ours. You put in a clear dish, put food in that clear dish, they're not going to know how to get to that food.
Mhm.
They may be
right.
able to see it and recognize it. They're going to hit the bottom, they're going to hit the sides, and they're going to move all over, and they're not going to be able to find the food because they don't understand going up and over and back down.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and my first thing is, as you were telling that or asking this question for your friend, for
Mhm.
our friend, the
Mhm.
first thing that came to my head was, how did the person she bought them from? You said Australia. Was
Mhm.
it, where I would call them and say, how did you feed? Because
That's
if
what I
they
asked
were
her
not
about.
using dishes, like I don't use
Yeah.
dishes. I have before with seahorses that I bred myself
Mhm.
and trained them onto the dish.
Mhm.
But like all the other seahorses I've gotten from breeders or other people,
Most of us
usually I broadcast
broadcast.
feed. Yep,
Yeah, and
broadcast
that's
feed.
what she was saying, they were broadcast feeding. I said, "Well, it'll take them a minute, you're probably to get
You can
used to
train
the
them.
dish,"
Yeah,
and
Well,
yeah, so
the
they
other thing,
figured it out now. So it sounds like,
good.
she's gotten to that, and she said she's even seeing coloring on one of the males that she
Ooh,
didn't
cool.
see before. He's developing the saddling marks.
Ooh, I
Like,
love
she's
that.
seeing she's seeing that. So it sounds like they're doing well, but she had just got him, and it was taken. I told her,
Scary.
they'll figure out how to
They're gonna
eat.
get hungry and they're gonna
But
find their
it
food. And Holly was gonna say it.
interested.
one
It
thing that I'm
sounds.
also
Wait, 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 wait,
concerned
wait, wait,
about.
wait. Hang on, hang on. I
Mhm,
want to give Holly big kudos. Good job
mhm,
helping her through it, and great point to bring up, because
mhm,
someone that just gets their seahorses and they don't eat right away. I do have a video on how to
mhm,
get new seahorses eating. Look it up. But
mhm,
yeah, I mean, it can be frustrating, and you can think something's wrong. And
mhm.
great job, Holly, figuring out what was wrong and helping her out. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Cheryl. Sorry.
I was going to say that the one couple of things I'm having a little trouble with these two seahorses. One, yes, they are indigenous to Australia, and but they're also indigenous to other parts in the Indo-Pacific areas. However, I'm not familiar with them being as far out as Singapore area, which
Mhm.
makes me question: were they truly captive bred, or were they net or pen raised?
She
And
got him
have
from Australia, though.
She got them they came from, because we talked about this on another episode,
okay,
and Chris Carey had figured out they came from his place,
okay,
Yeah,
so they
actually,
were captive
originally.
bred.
That's
Okay,
why she
absolutely.
was asking about Chris
uh,
Carey being on here. So it was all kind of figured out. And from what she was saying, the thing that she observed at because she watched them eat at the local fish store and stuff,
mm,
they I'm pretty much 100% positive they were captive bred. They were just I mean, it's what happens to a lot of us. I mean, I know even with my erectus, you put them in a new surroundings, and they're a little shy of the new feeding equipment and new dishes and things, but they understand food. They catch on pretty quick. And I think
the
took
easiest way to
them a
get
minute
past
to
that,
figure stuff out and overcome their shyness is probably what
the
was
easiest
going
way to get past that, when I get a new seahorse
on.
shipment, of course I float the bag, temperature acclimate, let them in, keep them in ambient lighting as dark as I can get it. Don't mess with them. A couple hours later, I'll add some live mysid shrimp
Mhm,
Mm.
or amphipods, and you can sit if you sit back and watch them and don't move so you don't scare them. All
mhm.
of a sudden,
Yep, that's one of my hints. Don't
Start
be right up
looking.
against the
yeah,
Yeah,
tank. Go
and all
away.
of a
Let
sudden,
them.
yeah,
all of a sudden they're hunting because
Yep.
yeah.
I've never seen a self-respecting seahorse that could give up or not
Yeah.
hunt live prey.
Yep.
Then I'll let them. I don't add a whole lot, just enough to get them moving around and feeling comfortable.
Okay.
Then I give them another 2 to 3 hours. By then, they're already hungry because they still didn't get enough live. And then I add the frozen. And by this point, they already have been moving all over the tank. And it makes it so much easier to acclimate them. It's something a lot of people don't discuss, but there's a way to ease them into a new environment and make them feel.
Absolutely. And if you cannot get, or if you haven't gotten live foods and you're in a crisis, watch my video, because I don't use live foods in my video. I just show you how the tips to get them eating and not freak out, because you know. And I was going to say something different. Wait, guys, we're all talking at once. I was just going to finish my sentence and say that my seahorses do not eat first thing in the morning. I turn the lights on and it takes them a while to like get going and stuff.
Yeah.
If I try to feed them first thing in the morning, nope, they won't touch it. So every seahorses are different.
You got to kind of learn, and that's kind of what I was telling Shyla. You kind of got to watch your seahorses and learn too. When she was talking about how much my sis, and I said, well, I've kind of just learned how much they eat. You know, just
fish food. Sorry, go ahead. I'm going to mute myself.
And the way I do it, because I mean, I know, you know, a lot of people say only feed them what they can eat within 10 minutes. Okay, my seahorses want to eat longer than 10 minutes, and they're leisurely about it. So I give them a half an hour to eat, and then I remove the food that's left, you know, whatever it is. And by just observing them and their habits, you can kind of figure out, you know, how much they'll eat and what works, you know, for them. Like you said, your seahorses don't want to eat right away in the morning. And sometimes, especially when it's a colder temp, when it's 65 in this tank, they might take a while, you know, to start eating. But basically what I do is I give them that half an hour. And then, like I was telling her, at that point, usually watching them, they might pick at something now and then, but they're not gung-ho. They're looking at it and pondering it and
seeing if it has eyeballs. I've had seahorses
but they're not seriously eating. So then I take it. But it takes my seahorses about a half an hour, I figured out, to be done, which is about my time that it takes me to take care of the 3 tanks that I have, because I have the 2 tanks and a freshwater tank. So I make the rounds. You know, I feed the display tank, get them started, get these guys are waking up. Then it's time to feed them, but I got to come back around and change out the sock and empty out the I can't think of the name.
I don't know what you're saying.
Skimmer, yes.
Okay.
I'm thinking skimmer, media reactor.
Skimmer. So empty that, change the socks. You know, I've got maintenance stuff I'm doing every morning too. So it's taken me about an hour to take care of all the tanks. So half an hour. I go feed the squirrels, the birds, you know, it's just a routine that I do, but just kind of observing the seahorses and seeing the habits they have to eat and what it takes for them to eat and be done. I mean,
well, wait, we're gonna
aren't voracious eaters.
Hold on, give me a second.
Whoa, Cheryl! I know you're gonna talk about the 10-minute rule real quick, because I don't want my I don't want my food to thaw. So I just want to show you guys. I don't get the cubes, and it looks it doesn't look as white. This is very white in person. Don't ever use brown food. Yeah. It looks to me brown on the camera, but it's not. But it's very white. You can see all the little eyeballs, and this is Sakari. And basically, you can see where I've torn off little pieces. That's how much I feed them each time. Then this is a thin pack. I don't feed them a whole cube. I don't think if they're eating, put it back in the freezer, please. If they're my little assistant, child that makes
If
me
they
pause
eat
all the
it
time.
all, give them a little more, and you'll
Yeah,
learn.
exactly. You figure it out.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. You put
You
in
can
what you
always
think.
add more, but taking it
Mhm.
out is a lot harder.
And Ray
Yeah.
has talked about constantly how it's better to feed them a little bit many times
Right.
Yeah.
versus a lot in once because they don't digest it all. They
Which
don't
is
Yeah.
digest it
exactly
properly.
what
But Cheryl,
Mother.
I know you were trying to talk a minute ago. I'm gonna shut my mouth and let you talk. But also I do know that, like, for instance, Holly and I have talked about this in the after party quite a bit. But Dan suggests not leaving food in for more than 10 minutes because
Right.
bacteria can grow on it.
Right.
So, but Holly is being very successful leaving it in for half an hour. So,
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah. And lower temperatures help, I think. Like I said, my tanks are in the 60s generally
Yep,
most
I
of the
think that
time.
matters.
What I do is I add a small amount and I watch.
Mhm.
Now, do I have food left over after 5 minutes? I'm not adding anymore.
Yeah.
Do I have no food left out after 2 or 3 minutes? I'm going to add a little more. And I
Mhm.
watch them. The other thing I wanted to bring up, I recently brought some Krill Pacifica.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and I did I mention this to you, Holly? Or was it Hillary? Hillary.
I
Hillary.
don't know. I remember we were talking about that though
The
in
krill, yep.
on here, and I
Well,
had
the thing
questions
is, it's
about
very
that too. Is
it's
how
small.
worth it is it to use that?
Well, it's much smaller than even Hikari in most instances.
Mhm.
The beauty of it, it's also bright red, so it's very easy to see. And one of my future experiments, plus the fact since it is a saltwater species, it has the HUFA and, well, basically the lipid profile that they need. And what I'm questioning now, since we're now able to get this in the US, which we haven't been able to do in the past, what kind of difference this would make in the weaning process and growth of erectus, combs, engines, etc.
My
Well, and that was
seahorses wouldn't eat krill.
my basic question about it was nutrition wise is how worth it is it to feed to them, because I might want to try that with I don't have any babies right now, but just to
But
feed my normal seahorses, if it's good for them nutritionally, I'd like to try it, to kind of supplement the frozen myces.
well, the thing is, it's much higher in EPA and HDA, and because it is a saltwater species, therefore it
Mhm.
has the lipid profile, which is essential. And I already know because I've read some research studies on growth, etc., in neonatal erectus, and they found even feeding Hikari myces, once they got them large enough, showed a much slower growth rate than they should
Mhm.
have had, a much higher mortality. And what I want to know now is if feeding this to 3 to 4 week old erectus fry, do we see
Like
a
they're
significant
training them.
improvement in their growth and
Yeah.
survival?
Okay,
Mhm.
I was being distracted by the assistant, but are you talking krill still?
Pacifica krill, yeah.
My seahorses, they're big.
Yeah.
No, you got a different package, different brand.
Okay. I was gonna say my seahorses would not eat it, and I can't imagine babies eating it.
These are range between half to 3/4 of the size of the smaller Hikari mysis shrimp.
Okay. I had the wrong thing then.
Yeah,
Because when I tried krill, nobody would eat it. But I hear
and
you. So it's a
they're bright
specific kind.
red.
They
Yep.
can be finicky. I mean, I have to be honest. I mean, because I've heard, seahorse, like when your peppermint shrimp have babies, they'll go after it and eat it.
Yeah.
Mine would not eat
Really.
the baby peppermint shrimp at all. Nobody in my tank, and I have, multiple fish, multiple things. Nobody tries to eat anybody's babies from what I've seen.
Oh, see, I've
Uh,
had males eat their own babies.
Yeah,
Seahorse
and
males.
like I said, I had Sandy gave birth in the feeding station once, and Candy ate around them. She
Oh
wasn't
wow.
going to eat the baby seahorses.
No,
And
most
when
seahorses
the
don't consume it.
seahorses have babies in the tank, I have never seen my shrimp, my crabs go after the baby seahorses.
I have.
Wow. Yeah,
No,
I have, and I was
they're
gonna say,
all really good to one another, I guess.
You must have some loving family seahorses, because
I will
I'll
tell
have to
you,
find.
I see stuff in my tank that, people watch out for the crabs, watch out for, well, they're like a family. My crabs, my shrimp, my seahorses will all eat together at the same time out of a dish. And
Wow.
I actually started this morning. I went ahead and
They're overfed. They're not hungry.
I target fed my my peppermint shrimp actually this morning, because the way I feed my seahorse, I don't broadcast feed in that tank. It's in the dishes because I don't want it all over the place for me to have to find and siphon out. I'm trying not to pollute the tank. So I confine the food to dishes. So I was just thinking, well, maybe the cleanup crew's not getting enough to eat, because what they're doing is coming to the dishes to eat with the seahorses instead of cleaning up.
Yeah.
And there's not much to clean up, I think, because I siphon out right after the feeding. So I don't, I
Cleanup
think.
crew. Wait a minute. Cleanup crew is not supposed to eat the mycetes, though. They're supposed to clean up the algae and the gunk and the
Well, the
yucky.
mycetes too.
Leftover pieces for sure.
Leftover
Anyways, I'm sorry.
pieces.
So you target
But
fed
they're
them.
spoiled. They're trying to eat with the seahorses out of the feeding stations, and they have found out, because I've had them for years, they've learned how to climb and swim and get into the feeding station with the seahorses. And the seahorses don't care. They'll sit there and eat with the shrimp.
That's amazing.
And so today, to keep them out of the dish, I took the turkey baster and I squirted a little of the food to
Somewhere
the
else.
peppermint shrimp so they can have their own. Because what they do is they have a lot of feet and arms, and they'll sit at the seahorse dish and gather all the food. Well, and the seahorse is sitting there looking at them and not chasing them off. They'll sit there and eat with them, but meanwhile the shrimp's getting all the
they're making a mess. Wait. I wanted to say something before I forget. I'm so sorry, but and see, now I've forgotten.
And this is recent. Yep. This has been within the last month or two, so they learned it. They figured it out because they're years old now. They're like 3 years old. So
we act like these seahorses and shrimp and everything else don't know what they're
together, and nobody hassles each other. But the feeding.
That's awesome. That's awesome. The two things I wanted to say real quick is that, number one, I have to find that video, because I literally have a video of a male seahorse giving birth and eating the baby. Literally. So it does happen. And then second of all, I was just going to say, I know everybody loves the feeding dishes. There's nothing wrong with feeding dishes, but I literally have had seahorses that won't eat unless the food is in motion. It just, in case you're trying a feeding dish and it's just not working, they're just not eating, you can train them onto it. But if you're able to set up a system like Cheryl's, where you know where the food's going to end up, or you are able to turn off the pumps and feed them with a baster or whatever, sometimes you just get a picky seahorse, right? Like my Barbori, they would not eat. There's no way in hell they'd ever eat from a dish.
Figure it out. Just get to know them. Try different ways and figure it out. That's one reason in the grow out tank, see, because it's so clean and open, I do broadcast feed in here. And I use dishes, and I use the turkey baster to do all of it. So I want, when I'm teaching the seahorses to eat frozen food, I really want them to be familiar with all the ways.
Yeah.
So that for anybody that has them down the road, they're going to know how to eat one way or and it's not that hard once they recognize, the frozen mysis, and they're trained to eat frozen. I found they learn, they figure out. They might be shy for a few days, or learning your tank and your methods, but they know food.
Well, but I do have to. Wait, time out. I do have to say it does.
Let me back up.
Hang on, Cheryl. I do have to say it depends on the species because, again, there's no way in hell my Barbary would ever eat
Yes,
out of
an
a dish.
erectus, I think they're like Dan says, they'll eat it.
Guys, we're all talking at once.
We're all talking at
once. We're all talking at once. It's Cheryl's turn to talk, but I do want to say, Heather, I'm surprised that your adults won't touch peppermint fry. It just shows every seahorse, they have personalities, man. They, because mine, they didn't go after them like they would if I was feeding them. But if they're there, they're going to snick them. Cheryl, your turn.
What the hell are you?
Okay.
Okay, let Cheryl talk.
I'm going back over 17 years ago.
Go ahead.
And back then, pretty much everything was wild caught. Shrimp, seahorses, everything. And I had erectus that were producing fry. And I had what are commonly called ghost shrimp. But there's several different species of those. They're actually quite large. And there is a cleanup crew. And the best way I could tell to see when a male was about ready to deliver is all of a sudden all the ghost shrimp would swarm out and move to the top of the tank and hitch on top of anything they could get a hold of, and they would just start snatching fry.
Get ready for them. Yep. Ugh.
And but again, these are all wild caught individuals.
Right.
It's just very different now than what we're getting. I realize that, but keep in mind this was a more natural type of reaction from the species.
Right. Well, and Heather said her CUC likes fresh mysis over old mysis. I'll tell you guys, you're just so much nicer than me. My cleanup crew are there to clean up. I don't feed them ever. No, nope. My peppermint shrimp.
I'll say mine used to. That was what they used to do until they got smart and figured out where the dishes are.
Holly, are you talking about what tank are you talking about? Are you talking about the one with
I don't have a cleanup crew here.
Okay.
Remember, this tank is only the seahorses. So I'm talking about my display tank. So what I have in there, I have a blue spotted Watchman goby.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have a Mandarin dragonette. I had her for a few years, about 4 years. She passed away.
Right.
So I have the Watchman goby is the only other fish, but I have 2 peppermint shrimp that I've had for years. And I have several variety of hermit crabs in there that I've had for years.
And they all go to the dish and eat together.
Yeah. Well, the hermit crabs, they can't get to the dishes because I use these magnetized ones, from Salt Critters. Yep. And I've used suction cup dishes. So some of the dishes, like the dishes that are up high, they can't get to.
Right.
Now, the peppermint shrimp, though, have figured out how to get to the dishes because they use a combination of climbing the coralline algae that has grown on the side and swimming to get to the dish once they figured it out. Now, the hermit crabs, see, you got to remember Dandy is handicapped and I have to feed him on the ground mostly. So he has a little shell in the sand. And so everybody comes to his dish. And the cleanup crew, the peppermint shrimp, they tend to not really, they're shy of him. So they don't really bother him as much in his little dish as the hermit crabs will.
Yeah.
And he doesn't mind any of the shrimp. He'll eat with them. They'll eat with them. But the problem is that I see is, and I see this with my seahorses as well, is they don't consume whole shrimp. They'll like pieces. They'll eat parts of shrimp. Everybody does it. The seahorses do it. The cleanup crew does it. Because the seahorses will snick stuff and blow out what they don't want. The shrimp the shrimp and the cleanup crew, they're kind of like the same way. They pick and choose. They want the biggest, plumpest shrimp, and they're going to leave the little tiny bits that come in the that come
Are
along
they,
with it
are
or
they,
that eat a part. So
are they
there's lots of
spitting it back out? Are they spitting
huh?
portions? Are
Yeah,
they
they shouldn't be spitting it back out.
Yeah, they do sometimes. It depends. Like they'll pick and choose like a big fat plump shrimp. They'll eat it and they won't spit that back out. But if they get a smaller piece
Oh,
that
okay.
they're not fond of,
Gotcha.
they just spit it out. And I watch everybody eat, right? Because I've got fish, cleanup crew, whatever. And they are all kind of like that. They pick and choose the best of what they want, and they'll either eat part or spit out what they don't want or ignore it, so there's always bits and pieces.
Well, and there's going to be bits and pieces anyways, because I don't know the term, Cheryl will, but seahorses, when they snick food, they blow half of it out of what's
Yeah,
the upper part above
it's
their
a lot
gills?
of pollution. Yeah, the
Cheryl, what's it called?
smoking?
Yeah, but no, what's
smoking.
it
Yeah,
called?
yeah, no, they blow smoke. Yeah, but they spit out too. And in my
Yeah.
display tank, they probably have ciliates and have for
It's,
years.
yeah.
Right.
Like I've brought up. The thing is, because I have the fish in the tank and the other things, it's not like I dose them with peroxide to kind of control it, but I can't really eradicate it at this point because I'll put them back in the tank and they'll just get more ciliates from the other things that are in there.
Right. No.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, wait.
So,
You just made a fantastic point. That's one of the risks if you have other things in the tank. Like when
mhm,
she's talking about seahorses spitting out food, if I see my
mhm.
seahorses spit out food, I instantly worry because
yeah.
Yeah,
there aren't other fish, there
Okay,
aren't
I
other
think
coral, there's
yeah,
what
nothing.
happens
And
if
if
you look
they
at
spit out food, it means they've got ciliates. As
yeah.
Holly has said, if you're doing a display tank,
And I
they're gonna
use,
probably have some. It's if it's not making them
yeah,
unable to eat, it's
yeah,
manageable. However, when I'm trying to breed in the
it's
40-gallon
not
all-in-one, I
desirable.
don't want them at all. But
see,
I mean, they're
I
good.
I
have
agree
to
with you, Kelly.
say, I used to worry about it more than I do now. When I first got the seahorses, I'm like, oh no, they have, but the thing is, I've had them now for years. They've
Right.
lived with the ciliates for years.
So if you're
So I
new,
know
avoid ciliates.
yeah, you don't want them. And that's one of the reasons I love this. I don't have that issue in this tank. They don't have
Right.
ciliates. The other ones probably do, but it's not to a degree like, and I know I've talked to Cheryl about this,
Yep.
and she said unless it's a real problem,
Right.
it's probably not worth treating
If
because
they
like
stop
I
eating,
said, I'd put them back in there and they'd get ciliates again because I cannot treat the goby or
right,
the
right, right, right,
shrimp,
right. But
right?
don't forget, right? But that's why we need to do Ask Seahorse Source Part 3. And guys, don't forget to bring this topic
Yeah.
up
That,
because you are using hydrogen peroxide, which does help with this kind of issue,
Yeah, I think
maintaining.
I'm kind of
Okay.
suppressing them. It's like
Yeah.
treating a
Yeah.
dog for fleas is how I
Right.
think
Exactly.
of it,
Okay.
really.
So we're gonna let Cheryl talk now, and then I've got to talk char chambers, and I've got
I
to pick up my daughter by 10. So Cheryl, you
was just
go.
gonna say, seahorses. This is their jaw, okay?
Yeah.
And when they have the trigger that's down here, and it pulls back, it rotates this jaw like this.
Yep.
When they're close to prey, it goes
Yep.
back the other way. And so basically, what I call blowing smoke, typically it comes out of the right top of the right gill,
Oh,
the left gill. But that's what you're looking for. They should not be snicking it a little bit and then spitting back out. That is an
Mm,
indication of an inflammation in the thoracic or the basically in the jaw, the hyoid bone, and in the gills. And they should not be selective because when they suck that in and this jaw collapses and it goes boom, everything's going in. And if something's stopping, the only thing that's going to stop that from going through is going to be an inflammation in the oral cavity.
which can be caused by ciliates. And I'm going to link some videos because I actually did some pretty cute, cool videos about this kind of thing and feeding. And I know, Holly, that we want to have a few more questions that you wanted to ask tonight for your friend. And we'll try to get Chris Carey here to talk more about Whitey Eye in a week or two. But I did want to say really quickly, guys, an update on the char chambers. I did receive them. Thank you so much, Kevin. They are awesome. I opened them 2 weeks ago on Wine Wednesday, and I was trying to get thoughts on what you guys wanted me to do with them. So with the first one, what I've done is I've put it into. I took out the UV sterilizer from my 40-gallon all-in-one, and I put the char chamber in that compartment in order to, we all know that Robert has had fantastic luck in it literally going in a tank and the tank just works. You don't even have to cycle it or anything. But he was like, don't push it. So I put it in this established tank and I'm letting it sit there, giving the tank more filtration. And then my plan is to use it whenever the stupid male finally has fry for me. So I'm going to use it in the fry system and see if it can handle the entire fry system. So that's the first char chamber. The second one, I'll be honest, it was my birthday week, so it's still sitting there. So I'm going to either use it in a feeding, like an amphipods or something like that, or I'm just not sure yet. So if anybody has any tips or wants me to try something with the second char chamber, let me know. But the first one is in the 40-gallon all-in-one, and it's going to end up in my fry system. So we're going to see how it handles that. But they're awesome. They're cool. I am videotaping everything that I'm doing. So eventually I'll get it up and show you guys. But just wanted to update you. That was my favorite gift for my birthday, was the char chambers. And can't wait to show how they work. Okay. I'm done about the char chambers, but I just had to say it because they're very, very cool. And I can't wait to show them working. I went through the whole cleaning it and videotaped it. So I will get it up, guys. I know I always say that, but I will this time. And Andrea said, mine is in my display tank and they take turns lounging on it. What are we talking about? The char chamber?
Char chambers, yeah.
Do you have one, Andrea? Because I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm not actually reviewing it. It was just kind of a gift, and I already know AquaChar works. I already use it in all my systems.
Yeah, the char chamber, she says.
Woo! Well, post and tag me. I want to see how you are using yours, because I wanted to do, like this was a gift, so I want to do some experimenting. So I'm using the first one just for extra filtration in the system, but then it's going into the fry system. Pretty sure my male's pregnant. He's tricked me a couple times, but pretty sure he is now. Nice. Yeah, I'm going to use it in the fry system. And then the second one, I'm kind of debating on what to do with it. I want to test it out and prove that something can be done. So give me some ideas, guys. But again, thank you so much, Kevin.
Did I hear something about a strung out pregnancy?
What? My male? Yeah.
I missed part of it. I was time to leak.
Well, I'm going to be right back, you guys.
Okay, and Kevin said use it in your pod grow out. That's what I'm going to do. Pod grow out. Got it. And Holly, I know you're going to be right back, but did you have more questions from your friend?
No, she was basically wondering about how much to feed them. And they're doing well. She says they're eating now and they're exploring and looking good. But I don't know that much about Whitey Eye. So if you guys have anything you know about them specifically, I'm sure she'd like to know about it and things that could help her out since she's starting out with them.
The only thing I would have to offer on that is there's been several research studies done in Australia specifically on that species. And as such, there's a tremendous amount of information on that species, their habitat and feeding behaviors, everything. And I would suggest that you kind of back off and do a Google search for finding more information on them.
Sorry, guys, dead air. Okay, I was running to get the char chamber that's not in use yet, just to show you again. This is the char chamber. Whoops, look at me.
That's a Seahorse baby bottle.
Yeah, it looks like it, right? But it's really cool. Got the sponge on the bottom, very well built. Aquachar inside, if you need to know anything about Aquachar. Look up the episode where Brian joined us. And then holes at the top, very rigid airline. It's really cool. Aquachar is amazing. In fact, don't forget, if you're trying Aquachar for the first time, use Seahorse Whisperer code to get 15% off your first order. And I will do the pods like Kevin requested. So we'll see how it works in the fry system, and we'll see how it works in the pod system. Anyways, with the Whitey Eye, also for our friend, our Holly's friend, I'm not familiar either. Unfortunately, we can't get them here currently.
Let me see. I have a bunch of saved papers on Whitey's.
Oh, well, yeah, look it up.
And that was just done from the beginning of the project when they first started bringing in and started reproducing them, and went through the whole reintroduction period into Sydney Harbor and stuff. Let me see if I still have them on my computer, and if I do, I'll send them.
Okay, and Andrea, Robert made you a mega version. I'm jealous. But in my system, it's already, like the one that I'm using in the system, the tank's already fully functional cycled, already using Aquachar. So literally I just put it in there to give it a little boost of, as you know, Aquachar does work like a carbon, but then eventually becomes a biomedia. So I'm not cycling it, but I'm just letting it pick up some of the good bacteria so that when I do the fry system, it's kind of sort of already there. And then we're going to test and see if it just works, as it has for many others. The clownfish people swear by these, and I'm going to too soon, I'm sure.
Clownfish people swear by these.
Right. And I was going to say, Andrea, I'd love to hear how it's worked for you and how it's doing for you. I already love Aquachar, but the char chamber, I tried to make something similar, couldn't do it. This is awesome. And then I'm sorry, we keep jumping back and forth, but with the Whitey Eye, I will beg and get Chris here again. And we can have an episode where we talk more. In fact, Andrea, what was her friend's name? I'm terrible with names, but if you'd like to join us and come in and literally ask questions on video, or share what's going on with your seahorses on video, I can get Chris here the same week and we can have a Whitey Eye session.
Yeah,
okay,
the thing is, I know I'll have to see. Basically, I've got so much stuff on cloud and stuff like that. It takes me forever to find it. But I know I have at least 3 articles on them and all the experimentation that was done in Australia with them for the reintroduction program.
Right, but and that's really cool, good information, Cheryl. But I think she wants to know how to keep them in her tank. You know what I mean?
The thing is, what it starts out with the initial capture and breeding.
Right, but Seahorse Australia has done that. They're very successful with the Whitey Eye.
Yeah,
she has captive bred.
This goes through all the steps they went through to get them, keep them going, and get them breeding.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, I was in the other room busy, but I wanted to add on our Facebook Messenger for Wine Wednesday, Ray Ford did share an article about the Whitey Eye. Maybe you could post the link. He couldn't join
you want me to post?
Yeah. He saw that, I was talking about that, and I didn't check out what it was, but he posted a link, so that might be something that could help her out.
I gotcha.
It's Shyla is her name.
Shyla, thank you. I'm sorry, Shyla. I'm so bad with names.
Yeah. And she said she could watch us tonight. She joins us. I've seen her on here before, but she's working at this time, so she can't.
Okay, hold on. She just messaged.
There she is. Yeah. Yeah, she's been at work. So she said, she's here listening. So I said, well, I'll try to talk on your behalf.
Sure.
I can.
Perfect. Who posted that?
I did. And that's from Ray. He gets credit for that.
Yeah.
And if and I everything you're talking about is very valuable, Cheryl. I'm just saying, like for Shyla, I'm guessing she wants to know more about how to keep him in the tank. You know what I mean? Not, like,
I
of
would
course
say,
it
yeah, the
matters.
basic stuff of how to take care
Yeah.
of them, what their needs are, and what's different. Because, like I was telling her, well, my
Well, and
seahorses are
Cheryl's research
erected.
matters, but go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so I'm keeping a rectus, so I can tell her my experience with my seahorses, but I don't know much about Whitey Eye other than that they're smaller. So when she
Yeah.
was saying they eat about a third of a cube, and that's like almost too much for them, I said, well, that makes sense because they're smaller. Because I remember Dan saying a rule of thumb for the erectus was approximately 1 cube of frozen mysis for 3 seahorses.
Right.
And I'd say that's probably about close to mine. You know, I'm like you and Cheryl. I use the flat packs. I don't use the cube. So to me, it's like thumbnails. I use fingernails or thumbs. I
Right.
just know from experience how much to give them. And I told her
Exactly.
she'll figure it out. You put in, like Cheryl was saying, put in and watch them eat. And if they need some more, give them some more. But about mine, I mean, some people say my seahorses are not 10-minute seahorses. They're about half an hour. And at that point, they might be looking at the food, thinking about it, kind of, but they're not actively eating it, you know, then it's time to go. And kind of by watching them, you can figure out how much to give them that's about right.
Yep. And I'm going to,
Take some
Shyla,
time. You learn as you go with them.
yes, absolutely. And Shyla, I'm going to link my uh, tips and tricks to feed new seahorses. It's based on erectus, actually piebald erectus, but I think it's basically the same. It's just tips
Probably
on how to get them
similar.
to eat. And I promise I will get Chris Carey in here. If you have any other questions, I just realized the link that Ray gave us is good, but it's just the fish base, so it's not like care. It's more about what about the
About
species.
them in general, like
Right.
Cheryl
Which,
said,
and
yeah.
again, Cheryl's
Which helps still.
right,
You need
research, knowing where they're from,
Yeah.
where they were, why they're, all that stuff is really important. But when you get them from Seahorse
Mhm.
Australia, they're definitely captive bred.
Yeah.
And
One
so I
thing
think,
one thing
wait, hang on. I think that Chris
She
would be
sent
the,
me a
hang
picture
on,
of them
guys,
eating from the
hang on,
dish,
guys.
which
I
is
was just going to
cool.
say, I think that Chris, we need to get Chris in here because he's going to be the best one
Yeah.
to tell
He's
us,
an
their
expert.
behaviors, how
He
they
would
were
be the
raised,
expert.
how they eat in the tank there, that kind of thing. I always say,
Mhm.
ask the person that sold them to you
Well,
because
the,
they're
the,
going to
the
know.
temperature is also going to be different. It's going to be probably warmer than what we think of here, for Atlantic species and to a lesser extent Gulf Coast species. That's a pretty warm area down there around Sydney.
Yes, but
Mm.
Cheryl, they're being raised at Seahorse Australia. They're controlling the temperatures. They're keeping them lower,
Well,
right?
I know,
When you
but
have captive
I'm
bred
still
species,
questioning whether they came from Seahorse Australia or who they
they
came.
did.
I believe they did because we've
Yeah,
had this discussion before with Chris
yeah.
on Wednesday,
Okay.
and they
Which
are
is important.
suppliers. They're
That's an important discussion.
suppliers of where she lives. So
Yes.
Okay.
I'm almost 100% sure. And just from their behavior, she sent me a picture of the seahorse eating from its dish,
Good.
this
I'm just
afternoon. But it
I'm
is
just
a
always
clear
skeptical.
dish, so I think it's like because my seahorses went through that with their clear dish too. It's kind of confusing, especially if you have it sitting on the sand. Like in my display tank has sand, and like for instance, Dandy, I have to feed him because of his mobility issues. He eats out of a seashell on the sand
Right.
bed. And when the food spills out of the seashell into the sand bed, has a hard time. They won't, and all the seahorses will eat out of his shell. They'll gather around, but if it spills outside of the shell, th- they don't eat it. And I
It's
think it's because they don't want to snick sand, for one thing, and they probably have trouble seeing it for another. And the
right.
combination of the two, they
Yeah.
don't want to mess with it. So
They don't
I
have the
think,
visual acuity to say, "Oh, there's a piece of frozen mysis shrimp. I
yes.
can stick it." They're going to look
Mhm.
at it. It's all going to be kind of a white blur.
Yes,
The visual
exactly.
acuity for they rely on motion. It's kind of like a wolf. If you have a wolf that's coming up to you and you lay down and
Mhm.
don't move, there's a real high probability he'll never see you because
Mhm.
predators are focusing on the prey, the movement.
Mhm.
That's what triggers the chase.
Now, if I've noticed I don't know because I've had my seahorses going on a long time now, some of them for years, and I've noticed they figured out how to create their own movement of the food. So they will blow on it to get it to fluff up, in their dish.
Lovely. Wow.
And so that's another thing I see. It's kind of like I was saying, they pick and choose what they want to eat. And I remember Dan talking about this also because he was saying if they spit food out, sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean there's a celiac problem. It's how they eat. And I've discovered that kind of with mine. And like I said, I'm pretty sure in the display tank, there's celiacs going on. It's
Right.
kind of a given. But at the same time, I'm watching how they're
You're
looking at
maintaining it.
stuff,
Yep. Yep.
and
You're
and
maintaining it.
and they're picking, choosing, and they're eating what they want and spitting the rest out. And that's just kind of how it is. So they are messy
Well,
eaters,
yeah,
As
and
with
most of the things,
everything,
yeah.
as with everything else, every seahorse is different. If you
Mhm.
get to know your seahorses, you know when there's a problem and etc. If you're new at this, when you first have seahorses, hopefully they're not spitting food back out.
Mhm.
But once you've had them for years, like Holly has, she's learned how to maintain the tank. She's learned how to maintain, ciliates and etc. And as she described earlier, it depends on what your goals are and what you're doing with the tank. Whether you have, sand and rock and coral and beautiful stuff, or you have, fake
ugly
ornaments,
nurseries.
And you have to
ugly
remember
nurseries.
too,
My tank's not ugly.
another
No.
thing I
Hers
can
isn't
say is
either.
like
Hers isn't
now
either.
and
Look at her tank. It's beautiful.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
now and then, I mean, I see people like they panic because of the conditions of their tank all of a sudden, and the seahorses are going to get sick, they're going to die. One thing you have to remember, I think, is keep it simple. As long as you're achieving the right parameters for them, the clean the thing, they're going to generally be okay. So if your
Yep.
tank's going downhill, all of a sudden, a water change will fix it. You can take the seahorses and put them in a bucket of
Right.
clean water that matches the parameters of your tank. I match for my things are temperature and salinity.
Yep.
And if there's an emergency, like I had a tank break, like I told you, all the water poured out onto my
Yep.
floor. I had 8 seahorses stranded. But what did I do? I set them up in a 10-gallon tank. And what did I do? I used the buckets that I use for water changes, or because I keep a couple buckets for topping off the salt water. So I just heated water on the stove to match their temperature because I'm cold enough that I have to do that here. Match their temperature. I already know the salinity matches because I use the same formula when I'm mixing their water. So
Right.
have water, put it in a 10-gallon tank, put them in a 10-gallon tank with an air and a filter and a heater. And now I have to go buy an aquarium and deal with whatever I have to deal with. But
But
as
they're
long as I keep their water changed and they're safe. It might be more
sure.
maintenance. Now they're not hooked to a sump and all the fancy stuff. But if I keep their requirements up, however I do it doesn't matter.
Well,
Like,
and I just want to add to that and say the one thing you really want to avoid with seahorses is stress. So
mhm,
temperature raising stresses them. Then their
mhm,
immune system, they don't have the immune system of other fish, so then they get sick. You don't want to throw them in buckets, or this is what
mhm.
Holly's saying is when something goes wrong, it's fixable, right?
Yeah.
There's always an answer. Come join us on my Wednesday. Go to Seahorse Sources
Mhm.
group. ask, what do I do in this situation? We'll help you.
Mhm.
You can fix it. They won't die. They're more hardy than people think. Everybody
Oh
thinks
yeah.
seahorses are so delicate. They're really, really not. They're stubborn little.
Oh, mine have been through a lot. Like I
when
said,
when
their
they
whole
when they
tank
want to be.
broke. I've picked seahorses up off the floor that
Holy
that
crap!
have, when I was raising babies, and I know Heather has been through the same thing. She told me because
Yep,
there's sometimes you're transferring them between tanks to clean, and somebody accidentally gets spilled or left behind.
yep.
I found out when I was treating seahorses one thing because they were talking about applying topical antibiotics to
Hmm.
seahorses, and you do that of course when they're outside of the tank. I think just because they're in air for a while, they're not going to suddenly die. They hold water in their gills,
Yeah, I was gonna
and they
say
can
when
last a
wait,
long time out of water.
I
You
have a
don't
story.
want that, but don't give up if your
Right?
seahorse is laying on the floor. It
Can
might
I
be
just
okay.
Can I just tell you guys something really funny? When I was making, I've been working, guys, I suck. I've not made a video in forever. I've got so many videos started and I just never finish them. But when I was working on the pouch emphysema video, because back then I had a seahorse with pouch emphysema and I was showing how to, you know, manipulate the pouch and whether or not you wanted to use antibiotics and all this stuff. And I literally am taping and he's wrapped on my finger. I'm not even holding him. The seahorse is wrapped on my finger and I've got my phone set up trying to tape it and Sean wasn't home. So I'm like doing this on my own and
Yeah.
and then I look at my camera because I'm trying to make a video and I'm like, holy, he's out of the water. I mean, I like for all this time, and he was
Yeah.
fine. He was like,
Yeah.
"Are you gonna get the air out, Mom?" So,
No,
but
I did a tank cleaning once with when the babies, these guys here actually, I
hey,
want to
champ.
say they were about an inch or so at the time, and I had like 20 of them, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I was moving them, I think, from a smaller tank into the grow out tank or something, and I had scooped them, and well, I walked. I walked by. I thought I was done. Everybody was moved, and I'm walking through the area to the kitchen to get a drink or whatever I needed to do in the kitchen. And all of a sudden, on the table, I see something moving. I see squirming. And there was 6 baby seahorses lying on the table that
Oh
had been
no.
there, I want to say 10, 15 minutes maybe.
Mm.
And if I hadn't seen the squirming, I wouldn't have known that they had out. They were little. They were like little
Okay.
guys.
Okay. So
And
for
I picked
anybody,
them up and I put them in. They were fine.
okay, I just want to say for anybody watching that's new, we're doing the don't ever do this
Disasters
episode.
happen.
No,
Yeah,
but
disasters happen.
disasters happen. They are fixable. If you have a crisis, I mean, here's the thing with seahorses. Number one, they're hardier than people think. If you follow the basic rules, and we talk about all these deluxe nursery tubs and these huge sumps and huge skimmers and all this stuff. Yeah, if you want to go that far, you're going to have better success for longer. But if you're starting out small, you can still do it. They're hardier than people think. Just follow the basic rules.
Mhm.
I got to get the damn website finished, but in Seahorse Sources group in the file section, there's a basics. Make sure you have enough water volume, at least 30 gallons for a pair. Make sure try to have a very good skimmer. This, that, and the other. I'm doing a 40-gallon all-in-one without a sump, without all the fantastics, and my seahorses are great. I'm
Mhm.
very hopeful that the male's about to give birth very soon. So, and I'll be sharing that with you guys when it happens. But it
Yeah,
can be done.
Emily, when you're
And
done,
when you hang on, when you
no,
have a
I'd like to
disaster
share a
come to the
story. Is all I'm saying.
yes, absolutely, Cheryl. When you have a disaster, come to the group, come to One Wednesday. We'll help you through it. But don't be afraid of seahorses because there's so many ways
Mhm.
to be successful. And when there's a disaster, as Holly said, you can
They're
fix it.
hardier
Cheryl,
than you think.
oh my gosh, they're so. I mean, once you get a seahorse and you figure them out and you know their behaviors and you know when something's wrong and you know how they eat. I posted a bunch of links to little videos, but what we're saying is the truth. They're like so hardy. I
Oh,
personally
look
don't keep
at,
other.
yeah, Heather's saying at Seahorse Corner, her month-old
Yep.
baby was out of the water 20 minutes. He's a
Yep.
dad now, and his
I
baby.
remember Tom Hornsby telling me a story about treating for hydroids in a dwarf tank, and she thought she had all the seahorses out of the tank, and then she treated for hydroids with the, oh gosh, what is it, Cheryl? It's fenbendazole. I always say it wrong.
Fenbendazole.
Yeah. Anyways, so she was treating for hydroids, and the whole tank's a big white cloudy mess. And she gets halfway through, and she sees another seahorse in there, and she's like, "Oh my god, he was fine." You know what I mean? He was fine. He was like, "Hey, I'm hydroid free, right?" So just
Yeah.
don't be scared
No,
of seahorses.
okay.
Don't freak out. Cheryl, tell your story. Go ahead.
Okay. Back in, I want to say 2007, it may have been earlier. I had my first real success raising a large number of fry.
Mm-hmm.
And by raising a large number of fry, they were in about the inch to inch and a half range. And we had an ice storm. The ice storm took down the neighbor's tree, who took out the power to my house. Now, basically, the Seahorse fry tank with all these little bitty, about 1 inch long seahorses, all the seahorses, when the power finally came back on over 13 hours later, the tank was down in the 40s.
Mm.
They were all laying on the bottom, motionless. And I had tears in my eyes because this is the first time I'd actually raised a large number of seahorses.
Yeah.
And I put a heating pad under the tank, got their heater going, but I didn't want to warm them up too much because I know enough about hypothermia I would have killed them. So I started doing a gradual rewarming. And the little guys started lifting their heads, and they started to swim a little higher where it was cooler, and then go dashing back down to where it was warmer. I spent 4 days gradually rewarming that tank to get it back up to where it needed to be for to survive. I did not lose a single one of those babies.
Yeah.
And again, if you're new and just joining us, or you're thinking like, why are these people telling us horror stories?
Mhm.
We're just trying to show that seahorses
They're
are
hardy.
hardier than you think. You can fix it. New seahorses are harder than seahorses that you've had for years, and
Mhm.
they can live for years. My
Yeah.
big, beautiful purple male lived for, oh my gosh, like what, 8, 9 years? I mean, and I ended up losing him because of mistakes on my part, but we won't go there. Anyways, my point is, hang on, Holly. I was just going to say, these horror stories are just to show you that they're not going to like keel over. When you get healthy, captive
Yeah.
bred seahorses, when you set up and research and set up for them properly, and you do the right things to begin with, you can keep seahorses so easily. And there's multiple ways to do it. There's no one way. You've got to do it this way. We talk a lot about
Yeah.
fry tubs, and Holly's beautiful tank behind her is bare bottom and no rock. You can also do it like Danny's tank last week, which is gorgeous and has sand and coral and fish. I mean, you can do it multiple ways. Depends on your goals. Just don't be scared of seahorses. Go ahead, Holly.
I
And then
was
we're
just going to say the biggest thing I found, over my years with the seahorses, as far as what they are sensitive to, what they are prone to, is the bacteria infections. It's the organics.
Yes. Yes.
So that's the main thing. That's why you need to keep your temperatures lower, below 74. That's why a lot of us do high 60s rather than even in the 70s, is
Yep.
we're trying to not let that bacteria come in. They're susceptible to that. And that is the only problems
Real
health-wise
fear.
I've
Yeah.
run into with seahorses. Like I said, I've had them exposed to air. I've had salinity differences, temperature differences, but it all comes down to any problems I've ever had. It has been the bacteria.
And that's
It's the
temperature
organic
related a lot of
in the
times. Yeah.
water. It's temperature encourages it, but it's the cleanliness of
Yes.
snake. You got to keep the stuff vacuumed up or cleaned out, siphoned out somehow to discourage the bacteria. And like I said, with my queening crew, you can have a cleanup crew, they're great, but they're not 100%. And especially after you've had them for a while, like I figured out, they get lazy and they want to eat like they're smart enough that they want to eat like the seahorses do. They don't want to clean up the scraps. They're like, I want to go to the dish and eat like they do. You know,
See, I had very proper and well behaved peppermint shrimp that cleaned up. They didn't get
mine
food. They
used
cleaned up.
to, Kelly.
Right?
Mine
No, I
used
know.
to.
I
They
know.
got smart all of a sudden.
Every tank is different, right? I mean, every tank. People like Heather know, every single tank will be different. It's the
Yeah.
dynamics. It's
Yeah, but
what's in it.
You
But
Even
Holly
with
made
the
wait,
numbers.
wait, let me finish. Holly made some great points about filtration. She's right. The one thing you want to avoid with seahorses is bad bacteria due to organics. And we've talked about this endlessly, but the way you solve that is either
It's up to
really
you.
right. You can either do a shit ton of maintenance, or you can get a lot of equipment. There's many different ways, or a lot of water volume, many different ways. But if you want to know in your individual situation, if you're maybe worried or whatever, come on the show and tell us what your exact situation is. The problem is a lot of times people will say, well, how do I get rid of organics? And to answer that question, we need to know how big's your tank, what's your filtration,
There's so
what's your
much
flow,
to
what's
it.
your everything, how much are you
If you
feeding?
need
And I'm
to,
so
you're going to change out all the water. That's how you get rid. If you
exactly.
have to
And I
do
was
it.
going to say too, before we go on, I was going to say I'm so glad we talked so much about food tonight, because there's differences of opinion here. I mean, like, I feed less. I showed you guys earlier the amount of food I feed, because I've tested it, as Cheryl said earlier, and in the video I posted. I learned what my seahorses eat
Figure
in a
it
feeding.
out.
My personal seahorses only eat a little bit in one feeding, but then I feed them again in 2 hours. You know what I mean? Because I'm home right now, I can feed them multiple times. For someone who can only feed twice a day or 3 times a day, you might need to feed more, but you're going to learn it by what you have to clean up. Definitely don't leave the food in the tank, though.
Yeah,
And the
don't.
timing, we're going to ask
This
Dan
is
when.
where a skimmer comes in. The
Yes, I
skimmer
know.
removes the dissolved organics. It
Yes, Cheryl.
causes
Yes,
nothing but
absolutely.
all-
And I
Agree.
would like
Wait,
to.
I wanted to finish, guys. We're screaming
One
over
of
each
these
other. Hang
days,
on,
let's do a
Holly,
skimmer
wait. Hey.
episode, please.
I agree. We need to do a skimmer episode. And I was going to say we need to get Dan
Tuning
back
at the
in here.
dish.
We need to get Dan in here. Oh, wait, I'm going to say something about skimmers in a second. But we need to get Dan in here for episode 3, where he talks about all this stuff. And I mean, skimmers, Holly, oh my gosh. Trying to get it to work in the 40-gallon
I
all-in-one. Oh,
volunteer.
shit.
If I could aim my camera and have, because I can sit here with my thing and we could do a live video of you guys, who's the expert, helping me tune my skimmer.
Oh, yeah.
I volunteer because I feel I have oversized skimmers for my tanks.
Yep.
And I empty the cup every day basically. But what I'm trying to achieve is getting it to foam over to collect the stuff in the cup, but be like a foam and not be flooding water, or
Right.
not be dry the next day when I do it. But it seems like it's never the same from day to day. And I don't have anybody like, what am I looking for, what do I want to see that's ideal, and between the air thing and the water adjustment, where should I have
Yep. No,
I would
please.
love to be on camera and say, have
Skimmers
Okay.
Dan
are a
we say, do this, do
Wait.
that, here's what you're doing.
I love it. And we're wait.
Skimmers are
We're gonna
pain.
hang on, Cheryl. We're gonna do it. I'm just gonna say really quick, this is the thing. I had the exact same problem with the 65-gallon, because I've got this jumbo, ridiculous, huge skimmer, and I could never, it's still not right. I still
I
have
feel like
problems with
mine
it.
is
And
never
hang on. And in the 40-gallon all-in-one, I've got a much smaller skimmer, the biggest one I could get for the 40-gallon all-in-one, and it overflows on a daily. Like I wake up and the foam is pushed the top off and it's going into the water, and that's pointless because it's putting it back into the water.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is, Kevin, I'm guessing that you are a master of skimmers. I just have this feeling because you are so aquatic. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna text me, please, or message me, and we'll see if we can't find a day that's good for you. And you don't even have to be on camera if you don't want. But me and Holly are going to show you our skimmer woes, and you can walk us through it, fixing them.
Look, Kelly, I'm going to give you
Yes,
an
Cheryl.
example.
Yes, ma'am.
I use the same skimmers that Alicia uses
Mhm.
and Dan has used for many years.
Yes.
And they are rated for systems up to 170 gallons.
Mhm.
They do have a big footprint. And depending on how I adjust them, I can flood a tank, or I
Yeah.
can, when I get it, I have to clean them every day. I have to, the collection cups, the necks, and everything else. Then I have to dial them back in and wash them to make sure they're not going crazy. But by the same token, when I've got them exactly where I want them, I have
They're
beautiful.
perfect. Oh yeah. You know, I in my 90, I finally got it tuned properly. I can't even remember. Harkins Aquatics, I think, helped me figure it out, and it was perfect. Never had to adjust. But that's what I'm saying. Kevin said air bubbles and skimmer neck, excuse me. Hang on.
Yeah.
In neck needs to be approximately pea-sized bubbles at bubble layer. Kevin, not good enough. We need you to come and watch us while we're live, try to fix our damn skimmers, because
it doesn't stay that way from
Yeah.
over the 24-hour period. It's doing
because
different stuff.
How you know what I will.
You have to understand
hang
too.
on, guys.
I have multiple skimmers, so I can pull one out of a tank to clean it, pop another one back in before I ever have to worry about cleaning the one I took out, because I have enough skimmers to rotate equipment, which really does help also.
Absolutely. Well, all I was going to say is, I'm sorry, Cheryl, go ahead, finish. I didn't know you were.
I was just going to say, basically, it's much easier to be able to just pop one out and pop one in, and then go soak the other one in vinegar or hydrogen peroxide or whatever else you need to do.
Right.
And it makes life so much. So I have a little row of these skimmers.
Well, everybody can't do that though. And all I was going to say is that in the case where if my 90 gallon where it's perfect, one thing that's different than my other sumps and like in the 40 gallon all one is it's the level of water in the sump or the tank. When the level of the water fluctuates in the 90 gallon, I had it set up to where the huge skimmer was in a like baffle that the water never got lower or higher. Right. So, but figuring that out for an all-in-one, it's never going to happen, right? So I really think water level has to do with it. But
I build my own sumps, and the skimmer and filter sock go in the first chamber, which is the chamber that always stays consistent because all the water flows down below that. So I don't have that problem. But that's something to think about too. If you're putting together a sump, is you want your skimmer in a position where the water level never changes, or it's going to screw up.
Well, and if we ever do
mine changes, and mine is in the first chamber, but the water level's changing because I turn the pumps on and off.
Right.
Those in this
the first chamber is here. Okay, your first chamber is here. Sump is over here.
Yes,
next chamber water level is
here. The sump is all the chambers to me.
Right, and I was going to say, if we
in the first chamber,
if we're ever able to do this live, I will show you guys in my 65 gallon in the sump. The sump doesn't have baffles. So I'm really screwed. So Kevin, water level must stay consistent. Right. But in my 65 gallon sump is like not man-made, but I have a algae scrubber that was personally made for me by Ronald Chinners, excuse me, that is funny designed. Anyways, beautiful, works perfect. But then I have this huge skimmer. There's no baffles. So am I just screwed? Is the question. Like if I cannot keep the
No,
water
I have
consistent
baffles.
constantly.
The water level is different
You
in
need
the
to
it
modify it.
changes.
Right.
What you
My
want-
point was the question is if you cannot keep the water level
What you
consistent,
want is
are
your
you
skimmer.
screwed or how do you keep it consistent?
How do
Go
you
ahead,
adjust
Cheryl.
You want your skimmer in the first chamber because that's the one that's going to be maintain the static water level. The
Right,
next
but my question, Cheryl, is if you
Mine
cannot
does
keep the
not.
water consistent, how do you use a good skimmer?
Yeah. Well, the next chamber, which I do, is then I have a couple baffles in there. That's where I run my K1 media and several other Purigen and carbon and stuff like that. The next chamber then is a twofold where I have basically one high partition, two lower partitions, and what they're designed to do is hold a large amount of rubble rock. And my my heater goes in the first chamber next to the skimmer, and my Purigen and carbon and stuff like that goes in the middle chamber, and the last chamber is open strictly for the pumps going into the system.
Right. It sounds like a perfect system. But what I'm saying is, if you're one of the schmucks like me that don't have a perfect system, then what do you do? And Kevin's advice. Wait. Kevin's advice, a controller can be set to turn the skimmer off when the return pump is off, is perfect. But no, Kevin, what I'm saying is in this system.
I have that. It
Wait,
makes it
Holly,
worse.
please hang on. What I was going to say is, in my system personally, there's no baffles, and it's not that I do turn the skimmer off. I do have it set to turn off when the pumps turn off. I'm literally talking about, I don't know why, but evaporation or whatever, this tank, the water level does not stay consistent. Go ahead, Holly. Sorry.
I was gonna say, okay, so I have all this. Okay, so my tank has baffles, the sump, and the skimmer has adjusters, and I can turn it off. I can even put it in feed mode like I do my pump. Okay, but what I've noticed is if I turn the skimmer off or put it in feed mode, it takes longer for me to readjust it. It's worse.
Yeah.
So what I do is when I shut the pumps off and everything, and I'm cleaning the skimmer pump, I leave the skimmer running. I pull off the cup, rinse it out.
That's what I do.
Take
Yeah.
a paper towel and clean it out. If the neck needs cleaning, I do that too. Pop the top back on. But meanwhile, it's overflowing out, right? Because I pulled the top off. But I don't have to readjust it as far as the air and stuff or water level.
Right.
It'll adjust itself once everything gets going again.
It's like Kevin just said. When you
If I
turn the
turn it off, it's
return
worse.
pump back on, then you must have the skimmer wait for 5 minutes to turn on while sump level returns to normal.
So leave it off for longer, maybe.
Right. Exactly.
And what I've got to say is, Kevin,
like I said, we need an episode on this. We need to.
Yes, we're going to do this
lesson.
episode. Kevin, we need you to join us, even if not on video. You can do like I'm doing right now because I'm coughing and dealing with kids, but you cannot show your face if you don't want to and just tell us we're stupid and show us how to do it. Because
the thing is,
man,
a skimmer is a PITA, and at the same time, it's a critical piece of equipment.
Yeah.
And the larger skimmers are far superior. But you have to be able to maintain a stable water level for them to truly be able to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Hey, and during the skimmer issue, we can have the controller episode too. We can talk controllers and
seeing all
skimmers.
these things popping up.
And
I don't have baffles for different water levels, and I'm thinking, huh?
What?
I have tape on. See, I use painter's tape on my sump as far as where to fill it to. I use that in the chamber that has the actual pump in it. But it adjusts gradually between the chambers when I'm doing water changes and stuff. So one might be more full than another while it's leveling out. Takes a while. like Kevin was saying.
Thing is, what I do,
And
this,
my top offs are not usually fresh water, they're salt water, because the top offs I'm doing is from me siphoning out the food. So
right.
I'm not replacing water for evaporation, I'm replacing it for me siphoning,
Mhm.
which is
Gotcha.
kind of
One
different.
thing,
I don't lose anything to evaporation, hardly at all.
one of the things I do is on my tanks and each section of the filter, I use indelible marker and mark the
Yep.
lines of
Yeah.
exactly where I want the volume.
Hmm.
And I don't mess with it until I get the circulation going through after I've done a complete cleaning, until everything is stabilized to those marks.
Yeah,
Great
I do
advice.
the
And
same thing, but I use painter's tape. So I have painter's tape marks on my
That'll
sump.
work.
so
Yeah.
And
I
where
was going to
I'm
say,
putting the water in, when I do, what I'll do is after feeding time, I siphon out the uneaten food. And in the grow out tank, that's usually roughly a gallon of water for that, plus
Yeah.
a half a gallon before feeding time. I siphon out their poop and stuff that I find in the bottom of the tank before I feed them. So I'm replacing roughly a gallon and a half to 2 gallons of water,
right.
and I'd replace it in the sump. So what I do is I turn their pumps back on and stuff, and I watch the water level drop in the sump. And when it hits about, I'm used to doing it. So when it hits to where it's going to get too low, right about the pump level, then
Mhm.
I pour in the water from the bucket into the sump. I'm not
Right.
pouring it in the tank, I'm pouring it in the sump, and
Right.
I match
Fill
the
the
level marker that I have.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I
some
would say,
too much,
I
it
would,
happens, and then I just let it run.
yeah, I would say I had my skimmer in the reef tank. Perfect. Everything you're saying, put the water back in the sump, etc. But in a smaller tank, like the 40-gallon all-in-one, it's just, as you said, when I siphon out any extra food or I see poop and I siphon it out, when I'm siphoning, you end up taking water out and it just messes everything up. And
Yeah.
in
It
my
does.
65-gallon, the sump is just unique. So Kevin, we need you to come. You guys want to do it next week? Have or show the skimmer why isn't it working?
Yeah.
And controller.
Yeah.
Kevin, let me know if you can come. I'll message you on the
Yeah, and
side. But
Kevin's
and
right.
yes, everyone, I know
Kevin
you're
should be off while
extremely
you're doing
worried. My daughter found a ride home, so I didn't have to go get her. That's why we're still going.
Awesome.
But I still can't go much longer. But go ahead, Cheryl. Sorry. Cheryl, were you trying to say something?
I was just going to say, basically, Kevin's so right. Skimmer should be off while doing this process.
Yeah. Sure.
And the
Yep.
thing is, your best friend, I guess some of you use painter's tape. I use the indelible pens to mark on the,
Mhm.
and everything's marked off at where the level should be. So I know immediately if something's too high or something's too low, and and I also know what my equipment is going to do under those circumstances.
Well, Cheryl, you got to come next week too, because dang it, I'm telling you, in this sump, I can't get it right. The skimmer this skimmer was from the 90, to be fair,
Uh-huh.
but as Heather said earlier, she had what did she say? Okay, let's see what she said. For my big tank with 160-gallon water volume is rated for 500 gallons. So I have a skimmer rated for like a 300-gallon tank on the 65, right?
Mine's about that too. It's
I can't get it.
250 on a 55-gallon
But
tank, and
every time I've tried to mess with it, because if you guys remember, in this tank, I had a skimmer that was rated for like 100-gallon tank, and it broke. Some piece, some O-ring, something. I lost something when I was cleaning it, and it never worked again. So I put the 90-gallon skimmer in the 65-gallon sump, and it doesn't work. It's overflows every time. I've tried to
mine
adjust it. I've
never
tried to do
fills
everything.
that much.
Oof.
I'm either overflowing or I'm under, but I like his advice. So it's delayed. So I need the tank running, the pumps back on for 5 minutes before I turn the skimmer back on. Sounds like the secret. And it's the same controller thing as my pumps. It's got a 10-minute feed function.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if maybe I'm like trying to think what happens in the sump. Okay, I turn off the pump and feed. The water level changes, so I need it to be off for longer. Basically,
Right.
I need to turn it off when I turn off the pump. But
and then turn it on 5 minutes later. Right.
I need to turn it on manually. Sounds like, which
or,
is what.
Or wait. What he's saying, but wait, Holly. His comment was get a controller. Get a controller. A controller can allow you to turn it on 5 minutes later than the pump. So next week we're going to talk skimmer. You guys are going to help me fix mine, and Holly fix hers, and then we're going to talk about the 5-minute rule, and then we're going to talk about controllers and which one's best and which one can handle multiple tanks. Cheryl, what were you going to say?
I'm going to say there are skimmers and there are skimmers. Mm-hmm. And all my old Core Life skimmers that I got many, many years ago when I was first starting out have all had the innards sawed out of them, and they have all been turned into K1 media reactors. That's what I thought of them.
Oh, I know. We did a video on it. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but those things just don't work. They're a pain in the butt. They're a pain in the butt to remove the collection cup. They don't skim well. Before that, I had some hang-on backs, and I ended up with water on the floor, which was not making sense.
Yeah, I've had those.
Yeah, and the thing is, at least with the skimmers I have now, and as I said, Alicia uses the same skimmers. Dan's the one that got me started on them, and all three of us are using the same skimmers.
What's the name of it? Is it the ISOs?
I'm sorry?
I can't remember the name. What's the name of the skimmer?
They're SCA.
SCA, that's it. That's what mine is. It's an SCA.
I use one called Simplicity.
Right, and I do want to throw out though, guys, that I'm testing because we always talk. We need big skimmers, good skimmers, but when you have a smaller tank, the 40-gallon all-in-one, I'm testing out a skimmer that's only rated 1.5 times the tank volume. So I need help with that one too, because there's just not room to do another, because I agree with Cheryl, the hang-on backs suck. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, that's just, I'm just saying, this is the only skimmer, and I've owned several different brands over the years. And these are the first skimmers that actually give me what I want, do the job, and don't blow crap into the water.
Yeah, well, the one I have is an SCA too. And I mean, I loved it on the 90. I just can't figure it out on the 65.
Which one is it?
Oh, God, I'd have to look. It's huge.
Is it a 302, a 301, or a 303?
I'm not sure. I'll show you next week. It's huge.
Is it a big, bulky one? Is it a little skinny one?
No, it's bulky.
Okay, that sounds like an SA 302. Those are rated for up to 180 gallons.
Okay, well, yeah, it's not working on the 65.
Mine are Simplicity, and I want to say they're similar. They have the same controller that the Jabeo does. I want to see they're related somehow, because they look similar as far as the controllers on it and stuff. But I've been happy with them, other than I don't know, like I said, how to tune them. They have an adjuster for air and an adjuster for water level, which Cheryl kind of explained to me. And I've done okay with that, but I think what it is like Kevin was saying, I think it's because of the siphoning and stuff that we do. The water level in the sump is always up and down. And I've got them to the point where they work, but they take time to adjust.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily skimming immediately after feeding time. It takes them a time to balance out with the water level. And for me to get to where, okay, I'm getting it's foaming over the top and into the cup takes a long time. But when I try to adjust it to do it faster, then I'm filling the cup with water. It's such minute adjustments. I don't want to be playing with it all day long.
Well, couldn't you just leave it where it is and know that it'll catch
That's
up?
what I do is I leave it where it is.
Yeah.
And it's working because I get stuff, and inside where it comes up, where it foams up, it gets crap in there. So I know it's accumulating, but it's not getting all the way into the cup over the edge. It's in the part here. So the cup's like this, and it has the tube in the middle. The stuff's accumulating in the tube in the middle, but not much in the cup itself. But you got to remember, my cup is this big.
Oh, I know.
It holds about 2 fluid cups of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
you want your
it's oversized for the tanks that I have, because that's what I did, because they need a lot of skimming, I figured.
Ideally, what you want to do is have your skimmer placed in a chamber that even when you cut off water flow, it's not going to change. So when
there is no chamber that has that. Yeah. All my chambers change. They do. Yes. They have baffles, but they all change level. Even the first one. It's
okay. Well, here's what we're gonna do next week. It's show your skimmer, and we're gonna figure it out. And I'll show both of mine. The skimmer
naked or with pants on.
The skimmer. My AirPods are dying, guys. It's gonna end shortly. But the skimmer on the 65, I'll show you guys, and you guys can help me fix it. The skimmer on the 40-gallon, all-in-one, I don't know if there's any fixing because it's a smaller tank and, it's a smaller skimmer, but we'll try. Kevin, hope you'll come. And Patricia said, just wanted to thank us for the dedication and persistence providing this content. Mwah, love ya. I need to do more videos. Holly's even sent me material to do more videos, and I've been slacking. But I appreciate your comment. I appreciate everybody who comes to these every week. I'm not calling it yet because we have so many people watching, but ask your questions. I know you don't like just seeing us all chat all night, but yeah. So next week we're gonna do skimmers and controllers, and we're gonna try to pull Kevin in and make him come.
Skimmer too, and see if
I know it's hard.
I do.
Well, and
would it look too bad if I hauled out a skimmer that I cannot stand and shot it with a rifle?
Oh, come on now. But no, Cheryl, what you should do, because I know it would be hard for you to get the computer up and go show us skimmers, take pictures. That way you can share them and talk about them. If you can't show it, like if for some reason because I have iPhone, and for some reason with the system we use to do Wine Wednesday, my phone, I can't get into the stream. So if I can't figure out a way to show them, I'm going to take videos and pictures to show you guys.
Yeah,
and you can still help me in real time.
It's one of those
I can probably send you some too. I'll send you some videos of mine in the meantime, so maybe you can show examples.
I've fought and battled skimmers for years. And these are the only skimmers, and this is why Dan uses them and why Alicia uses them. Is they're only skimmers that actually stay stable and continue to do the job without blowing crap everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so everybody, Heather, if you want to jump in, if you're available next week, show us your skimmers, and let's talk about which are the best, which work the best,
show us your skimmers,
and then help Kelly fix her skimmers. But
I'm going to go. Good night.
Yes. Okay.
And,
all right. Have a good night. And wishes for tomorrow, Cheryl. Hope that all goes smoothly.
Yeah. Good luck, Cheryl.
I will let you guys know. For those of you that don't know, I'm having surgery tomorrow. Yes. So we'll see how it goes. I'm very positive. I have to be. Otherwise, I would be afraid.
Don't be afraid. It's going to go great. I have faith.
I think so, just from what I know about, eye surgery, right? I've known many that have had stuff like related. And yeah, they're pretty good. It should go really well for you. I think it's a tough recovery, sounds like, but if you do all the right things,
I've
you
already
know,
got the recovery covered. I've got all the
you'll
equipment I need here. We've got the food. My son's cooking for me and taking care of me for the next week, or however
You have
long.
him trained on feeding the
trust
seahorses,
him with
right?
the Seahorses. I like you.
Uh,
She
I,
has him trained.
don't tell him I may extend it for an extra week just for the fun of it.
There you
Yeah,
go.
there
Yeah.
you go. All right, Cheryl, have a good night and good
Thank
luck.
you. Good.
Yes.
Let us
Thank
know.
you. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you both.
Yes. Keep
And
us posted.
for everyone else out there, I'm going to end it in a second unless Holly has something else. But I did want to just update again. I talked about it earlier, but I got my char chambers. One's in my 40-gallon all-in-one that's
Yes.
already cycled and working, and I'm going to use it in the fry tank when we have fry. And the other one Kevin has requested I use in a pod system. So we're going to set that up and do that, and I'll give you updates and try to get some videos out. But yeah, anything else, Holly? Did I miss
That's the
anything?
only thing. I wish I had brought this up before Cheryl left because she knows
Ah,
her pods.
yeah,
Because I am raising amphipods, with the hopes of them reproducing. So I have like a live food source for the
right,
seahorses, but I don't want to use them to feed the seahorses until I have plenty of them and they're reproducing. And
right.
since our temperatures here where I live have gotten lower and we've gone back to winter sometimes, they kind of go into modes where I don't think they're reproducing as much as they will during the summer when it's warmer.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, they're kind of like I've raised the brine shrimp and not amphipods but copepods before, which I didn't have to do much maintenance. I pretty much ignored them and they did okay. I just gave them some food now and then. So anyway, I have in my amphipods, they're set up in a Tupperware in like a big type Tupperware tote thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably maybe 3 gallons. They probably have 2 gallons of water in there. And I have a sponge filter that I pulled from one of my sumps in there is their filtration. And I don't pay much attention to them. I pretty much ignore them. And now and then I give them a 100% close to water change because I'm like,
Right,
oh my God, I've been forgetting them. Now I need
right,
to.
right.
So I gave him a water change the other day, and I have the rubble rock in there that you sent to me, Kelly, is their thing. But because it's a pain in the butt to do 100% change with the rubble rock in there, I used to move them from one container to another. I don't now. So basically, I vacuumed out all the water other than maybe this much and gave them fresh water. But I tested their water before I did that, and their nitrates were close to 100. They were like above 80. And
Oh,
and they're okay. They're alive and they're
yeah.
doing their thing. But I had never asked how sensitive are the amphipods to nitrates and things. Apparently not extremely sensitive because they were.
I was
I
gonna
didn't
say
ask
we
them,
can
but what is the range?
we can quiz Cheryl about the range and the specifics because I honestly don't know, but yeah, when it
I
comes
mean, they
to the
seem happy
cultures.
and healthy, but I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about them for a month.
Now,
I just
now I
put
mean,
food in every day and that's it.
I don't know the correlation between nitrates and organics. Like that's always confused me. Like,
Yeah,
does
because
this mean that? Does that mean this?
seahorses, I assume when you have high phosphates and nitrates, that's high organics to
But
me.
I don't, for some reason,
And
could be
Trey keeps
wrong.
saying that it's not, you can have those parameters be fine, but your organics are high.
Well, no, that does make sense because when you're talking nitrates, you're talking bacteria. Bacteria does add to organics, but that's not all of organics. So you could still
Yeah.
have high organics and have low nitrates, or have high in nitrates and still I would think you would have high organics. But we'll quiz Cheryl about it more next week. Hopefully we'll have some other joiners too that jump in the video. But in my experience, cultures of amphipods, rotifers, even copepods are pretty easy. I feel like
I
Artemia are
never
harder
like
because
I
you
never
have
had
to keep
trouble with any of them, but this is my first time with the amphipods, and I'm
right.
treating them like the copepods and the Artemia by feeding them. And other than that, pretty much ignoring them till once in a while. I'm like, oh, I should test their water and do a
Right.
water change. And it ends up being about once a month that I change
I
their
was gonna say I don't think I've ever tested my copepod or amphipod systems. Maybe I better start, especially when I start testing the char chamber.
I don't
But
know,
I
'cause
was
they're expensive. I don't want them to crash is the thing, but they
right,
seem
right.
pretty low maintenance to me. I haven't had any trouble with them so far, but I see them moving. I'm like, okay, they're still alive.
Yep.
Let
All I
'em
was
go.
gonna say is that I have always worried way more about when I'm have a hatchery raising brine shrimp for fry,
Mhm.
Artemia for fry, because and Dan has talked about extensively how important it
Clean
is
it.
to keep it clean,
Yeah.
because if it's not clean, I mean, like using peroxide, which we'll talk
I
about in
feel
Ask
like the
Seahorse Source Part
peroxide takes
3.
care of it.
Hang on, we'll talk about that in Ask Seahorse Source Part 3 because he's going to go over his peroxide method with hatching Artemia. But with them, I worry more than with cultures,
But
because
you
with
don't
cultures, they are
do
just dirty.
that. Yeah,
But
with
you don't want them to be
you
too dirty
don't
to where they're. Go ahead.
you don't treat because I know he said you don't do the pods with peroxide because it can kill them. And so I remember that, but I'm not using the amphipods. I started them to use for hospital tanks and the possibility of fry and things like that. So I'm not feeding anyone the amphipods. I'm trying to raise them to where they'll reproduce enough for me to use if I need them in the future. But I started them right before winter. And the thing about them is that I found that kind of like the seahorses, and they slow down in the colder temperatures, which I've had a lot of. So I don't think they're reproducing yet at the rate they will probably in the
Yeah.
summertime. They've just kind of been hanging out and eating and doing their thing. They are reproducing, they are getting bigger. I see them, they're healthy, but I don't really pay attention to
Yeah.
them. Kind of like when I raised the copepods, they were in buckets outside for the summer.
Right.
And same with
It's
the
not
Artemia,
something.
and just
Right.
here's some food. Here, the Artemia needs more air than the copepods did. I didn't even give the copepods air when they were outside, and they did
Wow.
fine. They
Yep.
just survived in a bucket, and whatever fell in the bucket outside was what they got to eat. I didn't even feed them. They did
Yep.
great.
Let me read
But the
a couple.
amphipods are different. I don't know what to do for them other than I feed them and forget about them at this
Well,
point. And
we're gonna ask Cheryl about that next week, but I just want to read a couple comments. Shyla said she had amphipods doing great while cycling high ammonia, high nitrates. Wow. And Kevin said amphipods need food and phyto. Right. With amphipods and copepods, we need to ask someone that's better versed on it, because I do the same as Holly, buckets. Now with Artemia, Heather, and I'm curious your comments, because with Artemia, I have a totally different system. No buckets and just leaving them alone for Artemia, because when you're feeding fry, I want them clean, I want them good, I want them no ciliates, no nothing, no disgusting waste, all that. So it's different with that. And pets, I just wanted to say really quickly, pets, plants, and fish tanks said, I put the wrong comment up, said, I have to decide whether to cool the tanks or the room for my breeding project. What's your breeding project? We want to know. We're interested. Are you doing seahorses or something else? And let's see, what else? Kevin said water changes usually help with the amphipods. And Pets, plants, and fish tanks, a fan blowing over the top will typically lower 3 to 4 degrees. We talked about this a lot earlier.
Yeah.
Go watch the beginning because we're over
And
the fans.
that's true. And it depends on the room temperature in your house.
Yeah.
It varies
Definitely.
depending on your room temperature. Yeah,
Yeah.
because where I live, and I don't run HVAC because it's expensive to run for the whole house here, but my house can get up to say 85,
Yeah.
90 degrees, and a fan that cools it 4 degrees is not enough when your
No.
house is empty. So, like I said, it's relative. It's all relative to the difference in temperature between the room and what you're trying to cool. It's like the heat, like the temperatures of the heaters, like I was saying, they're set to be 78, but for a differential of if your house is normally 70, then
Right.
this will heat your water to 78. If your house is normally 60, it's not going to
Right.
heat water to 78.
Yep. And just thank you, pets, plants, and fish tanks, for coming to join us tonight. We want to know what your project is. I am going to have to end this for tonight. We've been going for 2 hours and 40 minutes. But come next week, share some more. We want to hear about your project, what your breeding project is, because we're all about breeding here. And Shila's comment that I put up was about her amphipods that were doing great in the tank while cycling ammonia nitrates, but they perished when she had to treat with fenbendazole because of hydroids.
Yeah.
And Heather actually corrected me earlier when I was talking about treating something else, and she said it was panicure. I can't ever say these words. Panicure, not fenbendazole. I hate these medication words. But again, Kevin. Thanks for coming. I can't wait to talk to you tomorrow. Hopefully you'll come next week. We're gonna end for the night anyways, but the wine's getting low. Me and Holly are screaming over each other. So thank you so much for coming. Come back next week when we're going to talk about skimmers, hopefully show our skimmers and talk about controllers. So happy Wine Wednesday, everybody. We'll see you next week. Say bye, Holly.